All right. Are we live? Hello, everyone. If you're in the chat, I can see. Yep, fashionably late, says Shadu. We are fashionably late. I am filling in for Paul tonight, and I can't do it all by myself. Hello, my name is Ben. I cannot do it all by myself. I'm joined by a good friend of the show, a regular on Postgame Live, Horatio. How are you this evening, Horatio?
Welcome. Thanks for having me.
Mate, I've been wanting to get you on for a little bit, and Paul's given me the opportunity to sit in the big chair tonight. He's away again. I don't know what he's at this time, another Ninja Turtle convention or something. I don't know where he is, but he's disappeared on me again. So I've just come from the footy tipping show, and I'm ready to launch into a big Paul James show, even though he's not here. So we haven't got teams to talk about, Horatio, but we will go through some team speculation, some who we think might be in and out, if there are any changes, I guess. But let's just assume for a moment that there will be, because most of the time there is. We'll have a look at last time we played at GWS, some history between the two sides over the years as well. I did hear from Kiri just before that we haven't beaten them at ENGIE Stadium for about 14 years or 12 years, which is a bit worrying. We'll cast an eye ahead for the next 5 weeks. We absolutely need to win as many games as we can now, because the top four is starting to slip away. We'll go through some news of the week, a couple of big stories dropping. Supreme Court is maybe shutting down a couple of journos. We'll cover that story a little bit. I've got a few trivia questions tonight, but I have got a very, very big segment, Horatio, and anyone watching. I'm very excited about this segment. I'm going to challenge the idea of football traditions. I'm going to take Horatio through all the changes to the wonderful game we call AFL rules over basically since 150 plus years, and get Horatio's thoughts on that as we go through it. But, mate, are you ready to go? I am.
Yep, let's get into it.
Let's get stuck into it. And hello, Roman Craig. I can see you there as well. Paul, Paul is looking slightly different tonight. He's looking very different. No, Paul is Ninja Turtle convention, I believe. So anyway, all right. So the teams, as I said, haven't been announced yet, but surely, Horatio, one of the outs this week has to be Jake Kolodjasny. I don't know. You don't have to agree with me there, but how many chances does the bloke get? Seriously. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think we should just call him like the steak now, because like he's well done, man. He is well done.
Absolutely. Well, if I had that graphic somewhere on hand, I'd pull it up. He is completely well done, and I feel like he's probably due a rest at least anyway, and we'll maybe give someone an opportunity. The question you always have to, the way you have to answer these things is, well, if you're going to drop him, who do you bring in? And I'm actually going to compliment Paul on his idea of throwing Blitzarbs back in defence and just shuffling the pieces a little bit. I think maybe we don't need a replacement defender. We've already got someone in the team, and we just move them back. You've also got Jack Henry there as well, who hasn't been playing down back. So my answer.
No, I do like that idea of having Blitz down there. I think, I think just giving him that, giving him the role and just say, right, we just need you to be this guy.
Yeah.
I think that's still, like I say, I think the way that he's been playing for the last 5 or so years, I don't know that he's capable of playing at that level anymore. But I think he could certainly go back to and do a job defensively for the rest of the year. No doubt about that in my mind.
Yeah. Who would you have? I mean, I'm obviously keen to get Jake out of the side, but is there anyone that you don't know? Maybe there isn't anyone, but is anyone that you think probably needs to make way?
Look, I mean, I guess we ask these questions when you ask these questions, when you think about it, it's all, well, it's all very well to say, well, we want to get George in, we want to get Polk in, we want to get, this bloke, and a fellow who we've mentioned many times over the last year or so, a bloke called Jed Hughes. I don't know if people might remember him.
Vaguely remember Jed.
Let me ask you this question. I asked this in Discord the other day. It's like, how have we decided that Jed Hughes is cooked and Kohler is not? I'm not sure how we've arrived at that decision.
Who's got photos of the coaches? That's probably the big question. Maybe Jed doesn't have access to the dossier, and Jake Kolodjasny does. But that's the only thing I can think of. Jed's just patiently doing his bit in the VFL, waiting for that opportunity. I don't know if it's going to come, but hopefully one day we'll see him again in the hoops in the senior team before it's all said and done. I cannot see that being an in, but stranger things have happened. I just think right now we've got to arrest this. It's not a losing streak, I wouldn't say, but it's a bit of a tough run of form that we're in, and we need to get some wins, and probably need to start with banking an away win against a team. It's probably fair to say, Horatio, has been a bit of a bogey side for us in recent years.
They have. They certainly have. And it doesn't matter where we play them. They just,
Doesn't matter.
I was thinking, with like Fremantle playing the Giants in Canberra on the weekend, and I was like, I'm glad we've got them glad we've got them in Sydney and not here. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, we got a decent record against them in Canberra. Everywhere else we suck, even in Geelong. Yeah. So maybe we should have asked them to move it to Canberra.
Yeah, why don't we? Let's play in Canberra, and then it's actually a little bit closer for us Victorians if we want to drive there too. It's not 9 hours. I don't mind driving. I've driven to Sydney once or twice, Adelaide a couple of times as well, but I'm quite keen on a game on a reasonable, like a Saturday twilight would be perfect to drive, get up, leave early in the morning and get there. Another name I want to throw at you, and this is one of the possible likely ins, and I could be way, way off. Is James Worpel, is he done for the year? Is he going to get another chance, or if he's going to have a chance at all, we need to start seeing it soon. Have we basically just stamped his papers, never to be seen again in 2026, or could we see him in the next, if not this week, in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he got dropped after I gave him votes in the Collingwood game, like the week after they dropped him. Yeah. After I gave him votes, and he hasn't been back since. So, So I'd say he's cooked myself. Like he probably played his best game for the club in that Collingwood game, and that it wasn't good enough. So I don't know. I don't know. Maybe we feel like we need to have a attempt to beat a few of his bad habits out of him in the VFL before we give him a real good look at AFL level. I don't know, but I mean, look, this is the problem I think that we've got is that who do we really have right now in the situation that we're in that we can bring in who is going to make a real difference. Now, we could, you could take a risk or that, but I suppose that's what the club has to balance up at the moment is, are we going to get more value out of, I'm thinking along the lines of like, people are going to, I think if we want to, if we're serious about top four, then I think we've got to give Grind another run fairly soon, just to see if just to have another look at him and just see if he's feeling a bit better about how his body is, because I think that's been a bit of a problem for him all season. He's just lacked a bit of confidence, just hasn't played with the sort of precision that we've come to expect from him in recent years. So, I mean, apart from him, I can't really think of anybody else who, it's like, well, are we better off rolling the die, continue to, go with the tried and trusted dudes, or, do we shake things up a little bit and give a couple of blokes a sniff and see if they can kind of, make a bit of a difference?
I reckon we've got one more week to trust the old boys, the old soldiers. If it doesn't work, I'm not saying just turn the club upside down and see what falls out, but I think we've got to make some tough calls at some point. We can't keep losing games at this rate. I just don't see that's going to happen. The one player I don't expect to come back in is George Stevens. I love the guy and justice for George and all that, but yeah, we saw what happened last time we played GWS. He absolutely looked horrible after a really good debut game. So I don't expect we'll see him getting on the plane on Thursday or Friday, whenever they jet off. But maybe someone like a Jack Bose or Bose, someone like that. There's a few. The interesting thing about our team at the moment is you're right. There's no one screaming for a recall, but there's hardly anyone on the injury list. So Toby Conway is the only one with AFL experience that's injured. Everyone else is, for one way or another, pretty much ready to go. Obviously carrying some niggles, but it's a strange situation that we find ourselves in. Maybe we're just not as good as we thought we were when we beat Sydney a few weeks back.
Well, I mean, you know, I don't know. I mean, obviously, you look at this side, it's like, well, what's the difference between? Yeah, because as I said, it's more or less the same side between the side that did got to a grand final last year and the side we've got in right at the moment. And I'm just looking at it, and I think, except for that probably 3-game stretch with Collingwood, Brisbane, Sydney, we just haven't put it together. And it's not a talent thing, because we've shown at points in games, we showed it on Thursday night. When we get going, then we're as good as anybody. Yeah. But there just seems to be something up here that just isn't that just isn't ticking over like it normally does, that it has previously. So I'm not quite sure what the not being in the inner sanctum, I haven't seen what may or may not be going on behind the scenes, but something's just been a bit off. Seems a bit off to me this year, and I'm not going to speculate on what that might be. But a lot of blokes have just been, we've had a lot of blokes that have either been out of form or sort of haven't been consistent, which is unusual for us, I think. So you hope that we can turn it. We can sort of flick the switch and turn it around starting on Saturday, but not filled with a whole heap of confidence. I've got some faith, but I don't. I'm trying to. The head's sort of taken over from the heart a bit here, and it's like, well, look, the reality of the situation is we're not real. We haven't really gone that well all year. So we had a little purple patch there, but we've been battling for most of the year, really.
We have, and I think we'll continue to battle, and maybe we'll pull it together at the right time. But it sounds more hopeful than it is. It's not really based in reality. Like, it's happened before, and it could happen again. If you just play the odds, Geelong makes another prelim and probably bows out in a prelim. That's generally where Geelong finishes most years. Occasionally we take a step further and make a granny. Occasionally we take a big step and win the whole thing. But yeah, interesting few weeks ahead. I think we'll wait and see how that goes. So yeah, just a milestone, just a potential milestone this week. If he plays and kicks a goal, Shannon Neal kicks a couple of goals. He's 2 goals away from his 100 goals. So I don't know if it's a storm the field kind of situation, but he's getting there. He's probably not going to be reach the Tommy Hawkins levels, but he's obviously a different player, and good on him. Congratulations, Shannon Neal, if you get there. Tom Lynch couldn't get there, stuck on 499 goals still after blowing every shot at goal he had last weekend against Carlton. Did it again twice against earlier in the year as well.
Well, I guarantee you right now, if Scratch had been playing for Richmond in both of those Carlton games, they would have won both of those games.
Absolutely. Scratch is clunking everything too these days. So he's he's sticky hands. He's got Stewie Low hands these days. Can't believe it. Anyway. Jeremy Cameron, are we going to see, before we move on from the players, are we going to see Jeremy Cameron this week, or are they going to tap him on the shoulder and say, maybe just grab a few Great Northerns and sit by the fireplace and set this one out, mate. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Look, you've got to rest him. I think you've got to just. He's not right. He's just clearly not right. I don't care what the club says or anybody else says. He just, like Jez has never been a bloke to pick and choose when he goes and when he doesn't. Like, he's usually a bloke that, plays it pretty straight down the line. And it's just looked to me in recent weeks like he's starting to pick and choose. Oh, yeah, he's starting to second guess these things. And look, not saying he's gone soft so much, as much as teams know he's sore and they're hitting him.
Yeah.
And legally, they did it in the Adelaide games, and I've got no problem with that. That's the way footy should be. You go out there, and, the team's like, is this bloke, his arms buggered, his hips sore and all that. Go and test him out. Make him feel a bit sore. Make him think twice about whether he wants to back into that pack or jump on that loose ball or whatever, Exactly. And I think that's what's been happening. And this, I don't know. I don't understand how, I could see it. I think you've seen it. I think we've all seen it. How the coaching staff can't see this. I don't understand how it could be a case of clearly it's the same thing with Gryan. It's like whether he can play. It's not a case of whether he can get out there or even whether he's sore or whatever. But it's again up here. It's like if he doesn't have the confidence in his body, then he's not going to play well. That's just the way that it goes. That is just the way that it goes. And I think, I've been saying all year the Grind's in that situation, and I think Jez is in that situation now too. And I just think, you could do it for all the managing and tailored programs and all this sort of crap you get these days. Surely, if there's a bloke that needs a bit of, could do with a week off, it's Jezza.
Interesting situation we're in as a club. We're too far from the bottom to even think about just tanking it at this point. Don't say tanking; it's a dirty word. But the worst we could do is middle out, and no one wants to do that. But I guess it's all chips in. It has to be at some point. At some point, they're going to start playing Gryan and go, well, you do your knee, you do your knee. At some point, they're going to have to say, Jezza, look, mate, you're either in or you're out. It's not pick and choose. It's not like Paul James decide to have a week off every other week. Go on, mate. You gotta go or you gotta go home. So let's have a crack, mate. Let's have a go at it. But we'll see. I think he'll play. I just feel like he's played 14 out of the 15 or 15 out of the last 16. So he doesn't like missing and he doesn't like sitting on the bench either. So maybe
what were you saying last time you potted him? He kicked 10 the next week. So hopefully we get that Jezza.
I hope so. All right, let's move on to the last time we played GWS. It was round 18 of last season at ENGIE Stadium. It was the GWS Giants by 26 points. Pretty comprehensive, really. One bloke who we just talked about earlier, Shannon Neal, bobbed up and kicked 5 goals and got 2 coaches' votes. And Tommy Stewart got some coaches' votes as well. But that's as far as Geelong players went. That's as good as it got. No one else really starred. It was pretty much the Aaron Cadman show, if you remember that game. 4 goals in the third quarter in that game. Absolutely tore us apart. Jeremy Cameron played his 100th game for the Catters against his old side, but did struggle through the game with a groin issue. He's getting old, Jezza. He's getting old. He's breaking down. And we talked about George Stevens. It was his second game after his debut. And, probably got fanned out. The speed of the game was a little bit different with this opponent. And I can't even remember who he debuted against, but obviously a bit of a different game style. And, it wasn't as electric as what he was. Should have got the rising star that game. Do you recall the last time? I've actually wiped that from my memory. The only time I know the details about it is because I looked it up beforehand, but I try to forget the losses. But
I was thinking, gee, I'm battling to remember much about that game.
Yeah.
But now that you put in context of just remind me, that was George had the great debut and then basically They barely touched it the next week. And no, I remember, I do remember that was one of those games where they just we struggled to do it against the best times, but they just carved us up when they needed to. They carved us up through the middle, and we just didn't seem to have the either the structure or the willingness to block up the middle. And I think I got on after that particular game on PGL and just said, look, if we aren't willing to basically, put guys in the guts and just block the run, because this is and I think I think we've seen that we're having a problem with it again this year. Like once we turn it over, bam, it's pretty much instant score. Like teams are incredibly efficient on us when we when they get it forward on us, as we saw on Thursday night. They're very efficient. And the one thing that Chris Scott did say in the presser was that they kick straight, but we gave them easy looks as well. So and against a side like the Giants that love to take it down the middle, sort of a bit like how we used to do it in the glory years.
Yeah, old days.
If we're not willing to really work hard defensively through the middle, then it's going to be a big ask. And look, they've been up and down like a yo-yo all year, but I think what they have shown is that if you give them a sniff and you give them a run at it, then they're still more than capable of doing the business. So and I think that's pretty much what happened where we played them last year. Just no defensive structure in the middle of the ground. They were just running it through there. And then, of course, Cadman had a field day because our defenders are getting caught out of position.
It's interesting. They're one of those teams that you just can't figure out who they are. Like, are they a good team? Are they a shit team? And, they could finish 10th and win 5 games on the trot. They put it all together at the right time, and it's not going to happen. I doubt anyone who's going to finish in the 9th or 10th spot will ever win the grand final. Maybe 50 years or something like that. But it's possible. They are that type of team that, geez, when they're good, I was listening to it on the radio, and I remember you talking about when they were smashing the Lions, kicked 14 goals in a quarter. Lions can't win the premiership after that, and GWS probably should win the premiership after that. But
I never said the Giants would win the premiership.
I know you didn't say that. You said Brisbane wouldn't win the premiership after that.
And I still don't think they will.
Yeah.
But, I don't want to waste time talking about Brisbane, but the point that I make with that, I mean, they can still make the grand final, well and truly.
Oh yeah.
But when it comes to winning flags, and we've seen it with the Swans in recent years, the reason why they can't, when they get to the big dance, can't get the job done, is because they've always had a glaring weakness exposed that gets found out on grand final day. That's what's happened. And what happened with the Lions, and wasn't just that one quarter. I mean, we scored 100 points against them last Thursday. If you look at what people say, but they always start off like this and they still win it. So no, the numbers are different this year. The win-loss won't be the same, but the defensive numbers are way different. They're conceding 5-6 goals more a game this year than they were last year. Now, that's my thing, is that come finals, you can't get away. You can get away with that now, even against good sides. You can't get away with that in finals. So, I think that they've sort of drunk a bit of their own bathwater to a certain extent. But, look, okay, there's too much talent there for them not to be competitive. But I think they'll get their comeuppance this September. But
I hope so.
But I think we're in a similar boat to the Giants are in a similar boat to where we are.
Yeah.
They just haven't. Them probably injuries had a bit to do with it. They just haven't been able to get that continuity in their list. And so, a lot of players have been sort of up and down, and, the form's been fluctuating and just haven't quite pulled it together. But when they have, they've had games like that Brisbane game.
Exactly. There's been, I reckon there's about 7 or 8 teams that are night and day. Like they've had absolute red hot form and then they've gone to shit again. Carlton's the perfect example. 7 losses in a row, 8 wins in a row. Who knows? Everyone's assuming another losing streak's around the corner for Carlton, but let's have a bit of a look back at the history between Geelong and GWS. GWS, I should say, are on a 4-game winning streak against us. So sorry, everyone. That's not great reading. Not great to hear that, but it's true. We've played them 18 times. We've won 9 of them. We've lost 8. Yes, there was a draw in there. It was Tommy Hawkins, I believe, after the siren, the umpire blowing the whistle in his ear as he's about to kick it. Thank you, umpire, for that one. Put him off, why don't you? And we've played one of those 18 games was a final, which I believe we won that one, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think it was 2021.
Exactly, the semi-final in 2021. Which brings me to the next point, Horatio, some memorable victories. 2022, a massive away win at Manuka Oval by 53 points. The semi-final, as we spoke about, that was in Optus Oval during the second part of the COVID, that 2-year COVID period, where all the games were played over in Perth in the finals period, at least anyway. I think we bowed out in the prelim to Melbourne, got smashed. 2016, a 7-point win, another nice win at Showgrounds. That was a good one. And 2016, a 10-point win at GMHBA. But on the flip side, Horatio, we find a way to lose to GWS at GMHBA by 4 points on many occasions. 2025, 2024, 2019, all losses at GMHBA by 4 points, and a 7-point loss in 20. I've done my numbers wrong here. There's another 7-point loss in there as well. It's not 2024, but another 7-point loss there as well. It's not a Paul James show if I don't get the show notes wrong at some point. But mate, we are not travelling well against GWS, but thankfully we're not playing them on our home deck, which sounds ridiculous to say that, but it's true. Our best chance of beating them is in Sydney. So
it's weird because I think even from the first time we played them, a lot of other teams were giving them absolute beatdowns. And I remember the first time we played them up there, 2012, it was actually pretty close for most of the day. They actually gave us a pretty good run before, the class just kind of got the job done in the end. But, I don't – we've played a lot of very close games against them over the years. We have,
yeah.
There haven't been too many thumpings, which is, surprising, considering, like I say, the Giants, were getting regulation hidings for the first, probably 2, 3, 4 years there.
Yeah.
But I don't know. One thing I've been saying about Toby Green is that it's like he's one of those pricks that, like, the minute he sees a Geelong jumper, it's like, right, it's game on.
Yep.
And I'm quite happy to get him so that we don't have to play against him anymore.
He might be able to give someone else a chop in the throat and send him to hospital like he did to Danger in 2021. Put him in hospital. It's normally Dangerfield normally Danger puts people in hospital like he did on grand final. I don't know. Did Jazza go to hospital on grand final day? Probably. Get the broken
I think he did, yeah.
But no, that's the next point. The controversies over the years. It's obviously the Toby Green throat chop on Danger and Geelong. From the other side of it, we pinched Jeremy Cameron off him. I don't know what we gave him, but it wouldn't have been a lot. And do you buy the rumor? Are you buying the rumor that Toby Green has purchased a property in Aireys Inlet? That is doing the rounds at the moment. That he's definitely coming.
I think it's a done deal. I think he's like, I think for a player like him that has been at the club for, since it started, he's been there for 14 years.
Yep.
If he was staying, the pen would have already been put to paper. So if he's umming and ahhing, I don't think he would be umming and ahhing, quite frankly. I think he's made up his mind and, he doesn't want to. So I don't know whether whether where there's smoke, there's fire, as far as the property and all that goes. But he has been seen in Geelong on multiple occasions recently. So yeah, I think it's pretty much a done deal. I think we'll be seeing him in a Geelong jumper for at least the next couple of years, and I'm quite fine with that because then we don't have to deal with him anymore as an opposition player.
True. He'll probably get suspended for about half the games he plays for us, but that's all right. Or get fined. That's fine as well.
Look, it's like he's been one of him and Jezza when he was with the Giants were my favourite non-Geelong players in the league. So the Giants was sort of my de facto second team, even though I don't do the second team thing, but I had a bit of a soft spot for the Giants. And a lot of that had to do with me sort of watching a lot of their juniors coming through and knowing that they were going to be good players. So when I get on big, back in the days when I was a regular on Big Footy, you get this, it's a joke. It's a joke. What are they doing in the league? And this is an embarrassment. All that. And I'm like, fellas, look, you don't. Let me tell you, I've seen these guys coming through, right? Enjoy giving this mob a belting now, because in 2 or 3 years, they're going to be the ones dispensing the beltings, right? So lap it up now because it's not going to happen for much longer. And so it proved to be.
If only they had retained some of the players. It's a revolving door. They just kept replacing with draft picks, but they keep hitting on their draft picks, which is incredible, really. It's a bit like Geelong. They just keep – maybe they've got a good recruitment team. Maybe they've got a good development team there, but players keep leaving and they keep filling those spots with absolute stars. They're not recruiting. They're not bringing in trades or free agents. Generally they're not. But they keep finding a way to find the diamonds in the rough in that draft, and some good picks in there as well. Let's talk about some famous crossovers, because usually I come up with a really good list of names. I research and I think I've covered everyone, but listening to the show, listening to Paul talk, so you're always chiming in with a couple that I've missed. But let me just rattle a few off and tell me if I've missed any. Jeremy Cameron's the obvious one, of course. Tanner Bruhn crossed over from them, came to us. We sent them Dawson Simpson, Shane Mumford. I'm not sure if he went there first or Sydney. Can't remember where he went first, but
no, he went to the Swans first because he played in their 2012 premiership.
There you go. So he's gone, well, I'm going to play for the other mob. Stevie J went there, played originally as a player. I believe he coached assistant coach for a little while there, or some kind of part-time maybe role. I can't remember exactly what it was.
No, I think he went to the Swans.
I think he did the Swans. I thought he did both, but maybe I'll trust you on that one. So he definitely is a player. Joshy Hunt, I believe he's doing real estate somewhere up north these days, unless he's come back to Victoria, but didn't respond to my request to get him on the Behind the Play program with Paul. So screw you, Josh. No, he's a good player. Jimmy Bartell, football director. I don't think he's doing that role anymore.
No,
not too sure. No, he gave that one up. And Cam Mooney. Was Cam Mooney involved in a specialist coaching role for a little while there? Possibly. Don't know why he would, but anyway.
Oh, he's a New South Wales boy originally, I guess. So
Wagga boy. That's true. Maybe go visit some family and pop in for a couple of training sessions a few times a year. Call yourself a specialist coach when you turn up every 10 weeks or something like that. Did I miss any obvious names there? Surely there's one or two I've missed, but
no, not off the top of my head.
I can't think.
Yeah, I mean, usually if I'm coming in with some that have played, it's sort of going back, a little bit further. It's going back a little bit further. So, So I tend to if you'll go back to probably around the 1990 mark, and I can go back about another 10, 15 years beyond that.
I like to think that I thought we've plucked a couple of their good players, but before that, we set them 5 in a row of ours. Yeah. So it just seemed to be a bit of a destination club for some of our cast-offs or some guys who were trying to retire a couple of years earlier, and they just wanted to squeeze out a few $100,000 before retirement to pay for another room on the house or something like that. Anyway, I think that's the full list. Our biggest win, Horatio, was 65 points back in 2012, and the biggest loss we've had to them is a small loss, actually, 32 points. Of all the 8 losses, that's the biggest loss we've ever had, 32 points back in 2020 in the COVID days, which in 2020, that was probably like losing by 100 because no one kicked more than 50 points for whatever reason. We couldn't kick goals.
It was like going back to the 1900s.
We'll get there. We'll get there shortly. That's the segment to come. Our longest winning streak against the Orange Tsunami is 4, 2012 to 2015, and the longest losing streak was 2023 to current. Is ongoing. Potentially that could be 5 if we don't front up and play good football on Saturday twilight. Now, question for you. This isn't a trivia question, but I want to know. I think I've asked this before. Who has kicked for Geelong the most goals in a game against the Giants in a single game? You've got to be on. You've got to be on to get this one because it's not obvious. It's not obvious. It's not Shannon Burns. But it's not one of the. It's not a Tom Hawkins and it's not a Jezza. I'll give you a clue there.
I was going to say Nathan Vardy, but he had a day out against the Suns, not the Giants.
Out of position. Oh, that's another little clue there. Played out of position.
I know. Because Harry Taylor kicked 6.
Yeah, that year that they basically tried to turn him into a forward for a year. I think while we were trying to bring someone else along that may be a bit too young. I can't remember what it was. It was a transition period for the Cats. And, Harry bobbed up and kicked 6 goals in that one. I'm sure you'd probably guess who's had the most disposals in a game. Well, it's probably either...
It'd have to be... because just thinking back when it would have been a bit easy. Yeah. Well, it's not.
Yep, it's too slow. Gary's got Welcome, Danger. Gary. Danger with 45 touches. Well done, Gary. There you go. Well done, Chat. Chat wins. Chat beats Horatio. Chat won. Horatio 0. Well done. All right, let's quickly look ahead to the next 5 weeks, Horatio. We've got obviously GWS on Saturday, and then possibly another bogey side, St Kilda. This one's at home, though, so you'd think we'd win that one, but who knows? Melbourne at the MCG, a Friday night game. Should be a cracker. Let's hope it is. It's building that way at the moment. And then Collingwood, another MCG game a week later, and then Essendon. So 3 big Melbourne teams in a row. How many wins out of those 5 do you reckon? Do we need to win 4 of those to be in the hunt? Or
I think we've got to win all of them. I think we've got to win all of them.
Got to win all of them. Yeah, it's getting to that point where you can't really be dropping games with not many to go.
Well, I mean, look, the thing is, in 2024, we had those 4 losses in a row, sort of around the same time. We'd already done the hard work. We won like the first 7 or something like that. Whereas this year we've had our sort of we've lost 4 of the past 5. But we'd already lost 3 games earlier on in the season as well. So we hadn't kind of fully got ourselves into that platform where we could drop off a little bit and still, be in a reasonably strong position. I don't think we can afford to drop another one, to be honest. If we want to make top 4, we've got to win them all.
Oh dear, it's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun 7 or 8 weeks or whatever it is to go. If we lose one game, the sky's falling. It's probably going to feel that way. But, still a chance. If we make top 6, I don't reckon, you can't be super confident unless you're a top 2 team, really. Let's just be honest. That's generally where the grand finalists, you give yourself a red hot chance at making a grand final if you finish top 2. It's a bit of... it's more hopeful if you're outside of that, because especially with 2 teams that are interstate sides this year, you're going to have to get on an aeroplane and win it in another state, either somehow pinch a win in a qualifying final, or somehow force them into a loss, somehow make them panic in a prelim and find yourself in a grand final. But it's just going to be tough either way. Either way, you're going to have to go through an interstate side probably make it through to the final day in September. It's going to be really, really tough. Fox Footy has us 7th, apparently, says Shadoo at the end of the season. That could be wild card straight out and wild card. just finish 7th and then bomb out straight away is likely.
Yeah, can you imagine we finished 7th and got Carlton?
Oh, mate, if that happens,
or Carlton or the Giants.
If that happens,
finishing 7th.
God, that's just nightmare stuff. We just finished 7th just because of a stupid loss against North or something like that. Because we just kicked 5 goals, 15, just could not hit the side of a barn. And then we end up in 7th and we get done by Carlton and the MCG.
I think that's part of the reason we got to win every game, because we don't want to be down there, because if we're down there, there's a bloody good chance we're going to be playing one of our bogey sides, like a genuine bogey side. So, so we don't want to be down there. I'd much rather take my chances against, and get done by genuinely good teams than get beat by the 10th place side.
Exactly.
Well, they're saying, they're not finals or whatever. But yeah, it's like I don't want to get bloody bundled out by one of those guys. So, but I mean, look, what are the main danger games in this between now and the end of the year? Because we got 3 games we probably should win in the last 3 weeks. So it's really the next month that we've got to be thinking about.
Yep. Some tough games. GWS is a tough game. Melbourne's a tough game. Collingwood's a tough game. I reckon they're all 50-50 games. You're flipping a coin and hoping to land on heads 3 times in a row. It could happen, but I feel like we're going to drop at least one of those. I don't know which one it'll be. St Kilda, maybe slightly better than a 50-50 chance there. And then, we finished the season with 3 straight wins. Lose to North, it's blow the whole place up kind of stuff if we lose to North. Sack the coach territory.
Just remember, St Kilda have beaten us down there in like 25 years.
Yeah, got close once or twice, and the fans do turn up. Credit to St Kilda fans; they do fill up the river end of Gadinia Park whenever they come. And in recent years, they don't mind getting on the train and getting a taste of Geelong life for a night. So
I don't mind getting on the Yap either.
They don't mind it. Then they go quiet after a little bit when they eventually start losing. Quick round off a couple of milestones this round. I'd mentioned Tom Lynch before, sitting on 499 goals, still chance to bring up 500 maybe. Harry McKay, however you want to say it, he's a chance for 300 goals. And then you've got your Will Hayward sitting on or a chance to bring up 200 games if he gets picked or plays. Sam Walsh, will he ever get to 150 games? He's a game away from that now, and 100 games potentially for Darcy Wilmot and Jake Saligo. Obviously, all these players depending on fitness and selection heading into that. But just a quick question before we move on from this: can Tom Lynch kick a goal this weekend? Is it going to happen?
Who have they got? Melbourne?
I don't know. Yeah, surely he's got a goal in him somewhere. And then just go.
I don't know, mate. I watched that game on Saturday night, and you can't make this shit up. Like, seriously. Like, in fact, if you would think after the first time they played, he kicked 2-7 and basically in the end cost them the game.
Yep.
Right. That it couldn't get any worse than that, and it did. Like, seriously, I reckon next time they play Carlton, it's like, Tom, sit down, mate. You can sit this one out. We're gonna try one of these other blokes. Good. Like the couple. Did you see the ones he missed on Saturday night? Like, I'm bloody in my 50s, and I would have kicked it. I could have kicked it.
Yeah. He, I don't know. He nearly kicked it into the interchange bench from 30 metres out directly in front. It's almost went backwards somehow. He's just a joke. He's a joke.
The first one, the funny thing was the first one. I thought, I got up to get a drink in the kitchen. I'm like, he'll kick this, and I come back and it's like, what? What the score hasn't changed? What happened? Did it jump back or something? It's like, what, he hit the point? He kicked it out of the full from there. It's like, Mate, how
Oh,
much is this guy being paid a year to kick goals, and he couldn't kick that?
honestly.
Like, bloody hell!
Oh my
It's
god!
like
Don't get me started on goal kicking technique and all that sort of stuff. I just can't believe it. Honestly, you're a forward. You've got one job. That's all you have to practice. Lead up, mark the ball, work in sync with your other forwards. Try not to get in their way, and then when you finally get the ball, just go through the frigging routine. You use your technique that you've been doing since you're about 5 years old, and kick the ball through the middle, or at least kick it through 2 times out of 3. For goodness sake, he's a shocker. He's a shocker.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get into some trivia questions because this is where you excel. Now, chat. We have the wonderful situation tonight where we've got a live. I've got Kire on, but the chat is very, very clever, very wise, knows their footy stuff, and I reckon I want the chat to see if they can beat Horatio to the buzzer here. So I've got some tough ones here, and I don't know if you. Normally, I'm confident that you'll get these, but some of them I'm not 100% certain you will. Let's start you with a relatively easy one, though. These aren't all about Geelong, by the way. Which premiership player who's kicked in excess of 100 career goals missed their first 19 shots at goal? I'm looking at the chat here. Chat GPT, very good. Come on, chat. This guy has kicked 100 goals in his career. I'm not saying he's current or retired, but he's kicked 100 goals in his career, but his first 19 shots were behinds. Or as Brian Taylor says, minus scores. Don't know how that works on the scoreboard, but anyway. He's not a big fella. Not a big fella. A little bit. He's got a bit of toe about him.
All right, just question.
Yes.
Has he played in a grand final?
He's a premiership player. Yep.
Right, premiership player.
Premiership player. A very. This is too much of a clue, but there was a famous moment on the wing with ball in hand at speed. Jeez, I haven't got the right player. Chased by another player, couldn't quite catch him.
Wasn't Buddy?
No, similar. No. Come on, chat. What's going on? No one in the chat's got it either. Everyone's afraid to even throw an answer up. First name starts with L. That's not Lance. Yes.
Oh,
you're too slow. You're too slow. Jezelenko 666 has come up with the answer there. Missed his first 19 shots at goal. I would have thought you got that one. I thought that was a relatively easy one. The next one's going to be even harder. All right. Which player has kicked the first goal of a game on at least 50 occasions? This is the most anyone's ever kicked. Well, as far as records go. I'll give you a clue. He's recently retired in the last 10 years. Premiership player again.
It's not Tom Hawkins, is it?
Not Tom Hawkins.
I'm
keeping one eye on the chat here. Come on, chat. You can beat him.
Premiership player.
He has won a Coleman medal. And he's a premiership player. That's got to be enough, surely. How many Coleman medalists are there that have won a premiership?
Well, we're looking at like Ruffy.
Not Ruffy.
Ruffy and Buddy.
Not Buddy.
Oh. Tried in the last 10 years.
Well, they're about 10 years. I'm going to say 10 years. Yep. Has won. This is too much of a clue. Has won more than one premiership. Where do I pull these stats from? the amount of digging I have to do on AFL tables to find these stats. Has won 2 premierships. Has won a Coleman medal. and retired in the recent years. A true, he's definitely he's obviously a forward because he's won a Coleman medal, but plays for a Melbourne club. Definitely not Gunston Shadoo. Didn't win a Coleman. Plays for a big Melbourne club.
2 premierships.
Has a famous cousin. Come on, that's got to be the clue that gets it over the line. Has a famous cousin who didn't win a grand final. Used to take a mark in the early days of his career. Used to like getting up there for a bit of a hang. When he... Famous cousin, a current cousin is commentating on Channel 7.
Oh, not Big Jack. Jack Revolt.
Gary, he plays for Richmond. You're trying to be polite there, Gary, and not say it. Yes, Jack Rewalt has kicked the first goal on 50 occasions, the most of any player in recorded history there. So, gee, we took a while to get there. That was a tough one, though. That was a very tough. All right, here's one for you. Name all the Geelong players in the last, as many as you can, name all Geelong players in the last 20 years who have kicked a goal with their first kick in the AFL. It's really hard, some of these questions. If you get one of them, I'll give you a pat on the back. I've come up with 11, I think.
11.
Dating back to 2007. Throw some names at me, chat. Geelong players who kicked a goal in their first AFL, with their first kick in the AFL.
Was Shredder one of them?
Who's Shredder again?
Jordan Schroeder.
No. There are a few names here that aren't as well known. I'll give you a clue. One of them's got moved to Port Adelaide. Actually, a couple of them went to Port Adelaide. Now that I think about it. Now with someone else. One of them's now with someone else. Do you need some clues? Yes, well done, Jezelenko on fire at the moment.
Am I
Francis Evans. Frank the Tank was the most recent after that. There is a guy who currently plays for the Cat.
Jermaine Jones one?
Correct. That is correct. Jermaine Jones is another. There is a Geelong player currently going around on the list. Isn't playing in the side right now. Who kicked a goal?
Closey
is another one, 2020. So we've got Jermaine Jones, Brad Close, Francis Evans. I'll give you this one because you'll never get it. Ryan Abbott in 2018. There was actually 3 players in 2018 that kicked a goal. That's the weirdest stat ever. 3 players in the 1 year that kicked a goal with their first kick in the AFL. Link McCarthy was not one. Jezelenko. There's another clue here. There's another player that's currently playing for Port Adelaide. Currently with an asterisk on the end of it.
Oh, Saba.
The big rat. Yep, 28. He was the other one. Oh, sorry. Did someone say Lock? No, I've spotted it. Lockie, I'm going to say it now. Lockie Fogarty. He's now with, who's he with Carlton these days? Fogarty,
yep.
I think. Yeah, the big rat. Yep, well done. The chat, you got that one. A little bit slow. A bloke that kind of was starting to show something and then decided, well, then he ended up at Fremantle.
Jordan Clark?
Not Jordan Clark. He was a forward, I guess.
Well, Shane Kirsten.
Bloke with a hyphen in his name that ended up
George Holland-Smith.
Couldn't quite crack it, a bit like Mitch Hardy, more games than Mitch Hardy. George Holland-Smith. Bloke who had all the promise in the world and couldn't quite crack it at the next level. Ended up playing some games, I think, for Essendon and possibly Melbourne. First name Mitch.
Mitch Brown.
Mitch Brown in 2011. And a bloke who had a brother that played for Carlton and was an absolute star, but injury got the better of him. Brother didn't last too long. Looked like he was going to be better than him, but didn't work out that way. Ended up moving on to played a few years at Sydney. This Geelong player did his knee a couple of times, probably more than a couple of times.
Geez, the only one I can think of busted his knee more than once was Prismal.
Not Prismal. Did his knee in a qualifying final against Hawthorn. Trying to take a hanger.
Oh, Menzel.
And the last one.
I remember that. I was at that game.
There you go. The last one, Menzel, very good. Jezelenko's got it. Sorry, I can see you there multiple times. Last one, didn't play in the 2007 grand final, but if you watch the highlight videos of the season highlight reel, he's all over the shop. He's kicking goals, all like giving off no-look handballs, all this kind of stuff. Absolute star. Won 2 premierships for the Cats and kicked the first goal in the grand final twice. I think it was twice. No. Yes, it was twice. Yeah. Kicked the first goal of a grand final twice. That's got to be a clue. Kicked the first 2 goals in a grand final. Tom Hawkins did that too, didn't he? Kicked a goal within 13 seconds in a grand final.
Travis Varco.
Travis Varco. Yeah, 2007. There you go. Not Rook.
Oh, that's right. Because one of the first goals was for Collingwood in 2018, right?
Yep. Now, if Max Rook was another one, it didn't show up on my list. So Jezelenko, I'm not 100% sure on that one, but I did not have Max Rook on my list. So if you're certain of that one,
no, Maxi kicked the first goal of the 2009 granny.
That's right. But not his first kick in AFL footy. All right. Let's get on to this section I've been looking forward to. And this is where I'm keen to, there's quite a lot here. This is the footy traditions as we've come to know them over the years. I mean, when did you start watching footy seriously, Horatio? Was it?
I went to the first game I actually went to was round 22, 1977. Yep. It was Carlton and Footscray at the Western Oval.
Yep.
I was my dad used to play for Carlton, so I was a Carlton supporter growing up until my mum and dad split up, and then I went my own way and started following Geelong. That was in 1980. But okay. So I was sort of, I was into footy, but keeping in mind that you did, unless you, in those days, if you didn't go, a lot of the time you didn't get to see. So
exactly.
you sort of had to go, So, a lot of what you saw, you might get a couple of games, if you were lucky, you get 3 games on the winners of a Saturday night, but half the games you wouldn't even see footage of unless, you wouldn't see them unless you were there. So,
exactly.
That was that. So that's like, around 22 days will be 50 years since I went to my first game of league footy, and Carlton had to win that game to make the final, to stay in the final. I think
I've heard you tell this one before, actually. Yeah.
They're the only. I think they're the only. There's only one team that has basically been in the top whatever the finals were until the last game of the year and then missed out. And it's been Carlton both times. And that was one of those times. They couldn't beat Footscray at the Western Oval, and they missed out on the finals after being in the top 5 every week for the whole year.
Yep. There you go. What was the thing? Oh, sorry, what's your favourite era of football? And I'm going to go through the history of football and some of the major changes to the rules, the way the game was played, the way footy, just the basics of footy have changed over the years. But what's been your because we've all got a golden era. For me, it's probably the noughties, the 2007 sort of era. But I grew up falling in love with the Cats in the Gary Ablett era. It's probably where I fell in love with them, but I just absolutely adore the players from the 2007 to 2011. But for you, what's your golden era?
What's
your golden era of AFL football? More to the point, when was AFL the best product for you?
If we're talking like, league footy, look, I sort of go back to the 80s myself. Is probably my personal favorite time. And that was at a time when I was the only Geelong supporter in my family, so I rarely got to see Geelong games. I would go to Carlton games. I would end up at Essendon games mostly. A lot of Melbourne games because I had family that worked at the MCG, so they could get me free tickets to any game.
Nice.
Any game I wanted to go to. So I used to end up seeing a lot of Melbourne games and not a lot of Geelong games, to be honest. Like, I mainly used to see Geelong if they were playing at VFL Park, and occasionally if I could get tickets to the Melbourne or the Richmond game at the G. So I got to go to a lot of the suburban grounds and sort of experience footy, the way my parents had gone and watched footy when they were kids and their parents and all that. And it's I mean, you can go to the VFL and sort of there's a decent crowd, but it's nothing. It's
Exactly.
nothing like it used to be.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of nostalgia for that, but I reckon probably like in terms of strictly the on-field product, then I would say probably the 90s for me. It still had, still had a bit of the old school flavour, but, I think the game was still played the way I think it should be played at that point. And it's since, probably mid noughties, it's slowly but surely started to just move away from that year by year until where we are today.
Where we are, yeah, exactly right. But it'd be interesting if I talked to, if I had someone on the call now that was, I don't know, 18 years old and was been watching footy for the last 8 years, they'd probably say today's footy is a better product than the 1990 side. I think you are a product of the era that you started sort of following football or really got into football to a degree. I think. I mean, I probably tend to agree with you. I think 90s footy had a lot going for it. You had your 100 goal kickers, 3 of them going around, or 4 of them if you count Modra as well. Dunstall, Lockett, Ablett, and then Modra, and then probably Longmire might have bobbed up once or twice. So everyone was kicking 100 goals, and teams were kicking Cats were kicking 130 points every other week, sometimes 200 points. We were absolutely flying. But there's been some improvements in the game. But let me just take you back, Horatio. Let me take you all the way back to 1866. Believe it or not, and you may know some of this stuff, but I thought let's just go down memory lane a little bit. Well, not memory lane. Let's go down history lane a little bit. Football never used to be played in quarters or halves. It was just the first team to kick 2 goals wins. That used to be there was no time limit. It could take 20 minutes. It could take 4 hours, whatever it was. It wasn't until 1866 that they brought in 2 halves. No time limit though, but yeah, halves, fixed periods, and that's where it went. So I was a little bit surprised about it. I just thought, oh, no, it's always been quarters, always been that. So what I'm trying to get at as I go through all these things is that the footy does change a fair bit over the years. And if you were born in the 1800s, you probably loved it. Well, 1900s, you probably thought footy was fantastic. And what's this modern bullshit that we've come up with? I think
yeah, I think the point that I will make on that, and I'm sure that you'll bring up a few examples of this as we go along here. It's a new game.
Oh,
right?
It's a completely different game.
So you don't going back to those days, the purpose wasn't necessarily we've got this new sport, we're setting up competition and all that. It was basically like, look, we need something to do in the off season here to keep the blokes sort of fit. So, okay, here's 2 teams. Let's just go. Let's just go and have a kick, right?
Yep.
try, and then as you go along, you start, and people are always going to exploit the existing rules to try
Correct.
to, to gain an advantage within, sometimes, pushing the boundaries, but within the confines of the rules. But because it was a new game, there are a lot of things, of course, that they realized, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. That doesn't work so well. This works a bit better. The people seem to like this a bit more. So there was a bit of feeling out in those days. So,
Exactly.
So I don't know how much of, like, whether if I'd been around in those days and they were sort of doing this and they were doing that, how much I would have been like, oh, what the hell, they're messing with the game and all that, because you didn't really know what the game actually was at that stage.
Get on the kick. It is basically a soccer ball. They got some soccer balls from England or whatever, and it was a round shape, and they'd kick that around, and there was no lines on the ground or anything like that. It was kick it from one end to the other, and first it's a bit like Quidditch in Harry Potter. First to get the what's the little snitch called? The snitch. That's the first to catch the snitch wins. It was essentially something like that. First to kick 2 goals. It wasn't until 1880 that we finally, the oval ball was around. Sharon designed a custom purpose-built football and flattened the sides and made the ends pointed the ends as well. It was 1880, so a hell of a long time ago. Was that 146 years ago? We finally got the oval ball, but it started off as a round ball. It was 1886. We made the shift to 25-minute quarters. So we moved away from the halves. We decided that we need to give the players a bit of a break. The coaches wanted to have a chat with them. So we had 4 25-minute quarters. That was didn't start that way, but that's where it got to. As I said, gave them a bit of a rest, have a couple of have a drink, have a smoke, do whatever you want to do. Or a pipe back then. I'm not sure. It was probably a pipe, I'm guessing. A year later, we got timekeepers. We actually, instead of the umpire looking at his watch and trying to figure out, oh, that's probably close enough, we decided to bring in independent timekeepers. The single field umpire that was out there running around, busting his gut, keeping up with the players, would signal to. We just basically look at his watch and go, oh, yeah, that's time. But then independent timekeepers came in, and they would, you might know this, they would ring a little brass bell when it was the end of the quarter. None of the sirens. It was just a ding, 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 and that's all you got.
They still do that well into the 1900s.
They did. We didn't. We had goal umpires, but we didn't have the flags straight away. It wasn't until the same year that we got the umpires starting to wave a flag, because you couldn't actually see what was going on. They usually just yell out that was a goal, and then the people watching at the other end of the ground had no idea it was a goal because you couldn't see anything. So you just had to go, was that a goal? Not anyway. The players would start running back, and eventually they'd figure out that a goal was kicked.
I believe that's also why the umpires at both ends signal.
Exactly. But then they think, oh, let's get this little white handkerchief or whatever, and that'll be a way to signal to the other umpire at the other end. Do you know they actually used to have a thing that you had to kick it at least 2 yards in order for it to be, or 3 meters or 2 yards or whatever it was, in order to be paid a mark. So they used to just sort of tap it on their toe. And
then that rule, as we sort of go along here, the little mark rule was one of the
little mark. Yep, very good.
The little mark rule was one of the first things that we're not doing this. So it was a bit like, it's just to give people a sort of a visual idea of what they want. A bit like how you used to have to kick it over the line if you wanted to play on when you were kicking out from a point. You would have to kick it to yourself. That was the little mark. Players would actually do that in general play, so that they could then, just kind of chip it down the field.
Exactly. It was very footy back then was similar to rugby in that it was just this massive congestion. Players, all players on the ground are basically just be hanging around the ball, a bit like if you watch Auskick. It's a bit like that. So they're like, no, let's make it 10 meters, and that really just opened up the game a little bit. They made it a 10-yard minimum distance, which encouraged longer kicking, which really opened up the game. So that was quite a bit happened in 1887. Transition to one goal umpire. So previously there were no official field or boundary umpires in the early days. They had umpires in the goals, and basically that was all their job, is to just decide whether it was a goal or not. And pretty much no rules in the middle of the ground unless the umpire saw something. But essentially it was just get the ball through the goal, and that's really all it was. Not too much mucking around there. Now, it all started to happen, Horatio, as you probably know, in 1897 when the VFL formed. About 8 clubs decided to break away from the VAFA as it was at the time, and to VFA, sorry, and form a new competition. The big clubs, as you know, Fitzroy being one of those as well, St Kilda, South Melbourne, Collingwood, Essendon, Geelong and Melbourne all decided to form a new comp, and that was a big deal. And there was a lot of change that sort of happened around that time. So that was a significant, while it was the start of the VFL/AFL as we know it today, there were some significant changes that were brought in to change the way the game looked, to make it a bit more attractive to families to come along and watch. One of the big changes that they made was they introduced a 6 points for a goal and 1 point for a miss. It used to be just it's a goal or it's not a goal, and so you'd have like the scores. I don't actually know if they awarded it's like more like a soccer scoreboard, like 3 goals to 2 kind of situation, or
that's what it used to be. But I think that wasn't necessarily an initiative of the VFL. It came in not long before, but yeah, I know the story behind that. I've actually got a book over here on my bookshelf that talks about it. Although you probably looked it all up, so I don't know what I'm talking about. But
no, I'm happy to be wrong on it. But it was around that time anyway that was a big change. It was very much like soccer scoring. It was a goal or not a goal, but they brought in the 1 point for a miss, which would have been a bit weird at the time to reward a miss or a mistake, but that's the way they did it. And then, the same year we brought in around that time we brought in the extra goalposts. That was a bit like a rugby sort of field setup. Obviously played on an oval, but in a rugby field you've got the 2 sort of uprights. But they didn't have the point post. So if it missed the goal, it was essentially considered out of bounds, and we'll just throw it back into play kind of situation. It was, but then they thought, no, let's chuck these posts on either side. Some of them weren't that high; they're like 3 or 4 meters tall. They didn't really. I don't think they really standardised it at the time until a few years later. They decided, no, it's got to be 6 meters, the point posts. So that was a little bit different there. And probably the other big thing that happened at the formation of the VFL was they wanted to clean it up a little bit. So they brought in the tribunal system, and they started to try and clean up a bit of the riffraff. Lots of fights on the field, lots of fights in the stands with the spectators. So players, the administrators were pretty keen to clean up the game, and you'd start seeing players get suspended for thug acts and things like that. So cleaned it up a little bit, which made it a bit more attractive to getting women and children to come along.
If I remember rightly, that was a big reason why North and Port were not admitted to the VFL or not considered to join the VFL because their players and fans were thugs.
That would make sense to me, yeah. I can't believe Collingwood got admitted, or Hawthorn later on. That's weird.
Well, Collingwood hadn't been around that long.
Yep.
And Hawthorn didn't start until after the VFL was formed.
Yeah.
So Collingwood hadn't quite got the reputation yet. North supporters and players were nuts. They they had trouble getting umpires for North Melbourne games because the umpire he'd get stoned as they were going off the ground by the supporters, and players player pulled out a crowbar out of his sock one day. Literally pulled an iron bar out of his sock and give the umpire a whack. So it was
Oh, what are they doing? What were they doing?
Yeah, I'm fairly sure that that's why North in particular, why despite being reasonably successful at VFL level, were not admitted and weren't admitted when Richmond and University came in either.
We've got a classy product here, and we want to protect this classy product that we've come up with. And eventually they let other teams in, as we know. But in 1899, they decided we need to reduce the number of people on the ground. It's too congested. It's too much mess. We want to bring it back from 20 aside at the time. We want to bring it down to 18 people in the team. So can you imagine how congested it would be like these days if we had 20 players on the field at one time? I mean, I know we've got 23 all up with 18 on the field and 5 on the bench, but 20 on the field. So 40 players on the field at once. Absolutely crazy. And they had no center square. They had no 6-6-6 kind of setup or anything like that. So you'd have your 2 rucks going up for it, and you'd have 34 other blokes just hanging off them, trying to get the ball as it came to ground. That would be absolute scenes, really. If I saw that on a muddy day at the Kidney Park, what are you going to do?
Corio Oval in those days.
So I'd say that was probably a good change, that one. I don't know how the people of 1899 thought about it, but
the VFA got rid of a couple more and it played 16 aside for most of their existence.
Exactly. So it's like they're probably, as you'd imagine, they're in competition with each other a little bit, and one eventually obviously came out on top, the VFL. Now, for the first few years of the VFL, the MCG wasn't the home of grand finals. It wasn't until 1902 that we finally got the grand final happening on a regular basis at the MCG. Previously, the premierships were played in either a round robin format or at Junction Oval or the Lake Oval. So I think the MCC were being a pains in the arse and making it hard for the VFL to charging too much or whatever it was. But it took a while, but they finally got there in the end, and it hasn't really shifted apart from a few years here and there with for various different reasons, but it's been at the grand final ever since, and it will be till 2059 if you want to cast an eye into the far future. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. Now we didn't,
and rightly so.
Exactly. Can you imagine not having boundary umpires? How the hell is the field umpire supposed to adjudicate whether the ball's gone out of bounds? But that's what was happening up until 1904 when they finally introduced boundary umpires. A boundary umpire on either side of the ground. Even then, just one boundary umpire on one wing, one on the other, and good luck kind of trying to keep up. I guess it was more of a rugby scrum back in those days, and a little bit easier to sort of keep up with the play, a bit like a line ref in the soccer or whatever, or football. A little bit easier to follow there. Did players have numbers, Horatio, at that time?
No, they didn't. They didn't have numbers until the finals of 1911.
Well done. Exactly right. So first they trialled it. They wanted to see what that was going to look like. So let's see what it looks like to have numbers on. But it wasn't. Here's your number 5 and number 5 for the rest of your career. It's like, what's your name? Aaron Aardvark. Okay, you're number 1.
Yeah, they used to do it in alphabetical order.
Basically, I mean, every team kind of had their own different way of doing it, and you didn't necessarily have the same number week to week either, or year to year. But yeah, they generally handed out numbers 1 through 30, depending on your name or some other reason, or name out of a hat or whatever it was. But yeah, it wasn't a number for life. It was basically just to help figure things, help the spectators, I guess, and probably the umpires and anyone else sort of keeping track of things.
Well, the funny thing is, yeah, like have you ever seen there are pictures of the first game where they use numbers? You've seen the size of the numbers? They were like the cycling numbers that they're using in the Tour de France at the moment.
Oh, really?
Like what purpose they actually served, really, because they were tiny. And I always bitch about how much smaller and smaller the numbers get on the current Guernseys this year, so they can fit bigger sponsorship freaking advertising on the jumper. But yeah, they haven't got as small as the first numbers that were ever used in a league game. That's for sure.
I think the first time they did it as well, they were falling off because they weren't on properly, or I don't know. They just, the way they were applying the numbers just didn't quite work. So
actually, you know what? While you're talking, I believe I have a photo that I might just be able to flash up here.
No worries. While you're finding that, in 1922, I said, it was a big deal, the turn of the century, to get a point for missing a goal. They actually gave you a point for a loss, or points for a loss. You got 2 points for a loss, 4 points for a draw, and 8 points for a win. Didn't last long. But in 1922, they thought that was a great idea, and I think it might have lasted a year or two, and then they changed it all up after that. So, did you find a photo? Did you? Or
I'm just looking for. I'm just trying to find the book. Where is it?
I'll keep going. In 1924, we got the Brownlow medal. So obviously we've had a whole bunch of AFL footy, no Brownlow medal, but footy's starting to get serious now. So we need to start. It's becoming a bit of a spectator sport, and we want to. The players were mini celebrities, and we want to sort of acknowledge them. So yeah, players started getting a vote, a best on ground vote, one vote. If you were the best on ground, you got one vote. If you were the second best player or the third best player or whatever, you got absolutely nothing. So you could win the Brownlow medal with about 7 votes. I think someone did. I think Cargie Greaves might have won it with 7 votes. A former Geelong player there. So might have been the first winner. I think he was, wasn't he? The first winner of the Brownlow was Cargie Greaves.
He certainly was. Yep.
Certainly was. In 1925, you may remember that year. It was a good year for Cats fans. It was a year that we did win the premiership. We had there's lots of debate about the right fixture that the AFL should have these days. Wouldn't it be great if every team played each other twice? Well, for a long time, that's what happened. In 1925, we grew the league. We allowed some of these unruly clubs to come into the league, and we expanded to 12 teams. And we got to play everyone twice over 22 weeks. So 11 opponents, played them twice, once at home, once and away. That lasted
Actually, we didn't. It was 18 rounds. We didn't do 22 rounds until the 70s.
Oh, have I got that wrong, have I?
Yeah, we did. They didn't go to 22 rounds until 1972, I'm pretty sure.
I'll check. I'll come back to you on that one, but mark that one. But anyway, we got the 12 teams in because I can't remember who the extra 2 teams were, but we added a couple there. And we got the reserves competition. We got an official seconds comp. So we haven't, people that grew up 10 years ago watching footy don't know what the hell I'm talking about. What are the reserves? It's like the VFL, isn't it? The current day VFL, but now every team had a seconds comp, and you'd go along and watch that before the main event, the curtain raiser. And that was great. And we even had an under 19s comp at some stage as well. I think that was a little bit later on, but that was there as well.
Right, I found the picture. So
beautiful. I'm going to bring it up.
So I don't know how well you can see that.
You can see the top part of it. It's just out of the picture of the. Oh, there we go. That's a bit better. Look at that. Oh, how can you read that? Honestly, how can you see that?
So yeah, like you couldn't even actually see. I don't know what color I saw a better picture of this game with the Essendon numbers, how you could actually, what they actually really look like. But as you can see, the Collingwood numbers were very, very small. And yeah, the Essendon numbers in this photo are not legible at all. So
interesting.
So that was a picture from the first game that they ever wore numbers.
Okay. In 1931, we got a change to the final system. Basically the classic top 4, the Page
McIntyre system.
Page McIntyre system. So I know we don't like changes in finals, but the amount of times they've changed the final system, it's crazy over the years.
Well, that was the final system. Well, do you want to talk about how the final system worked before they did that?
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, mate, like it was like I've been following. I've been actually the book that photo was in.
Yep.
Right. This is a book that's almost as old as me.
The Courage book.
The Courage book of VFL finals, 1897 and 1973. So this book came out in 74, right? One of the first books I owned as a kid. Now I'm telling you, I have been reading that book. You know, I get that book out and reference it and the updated editions at least once a year. But I mean, I've read this book cover to cover many, many times, and I still can't work out how the final system used to work. Right? Like,
can I have a shot at it? No, you go. You tell me. You keep going. You tell me what.
No. You might actually have the proper explanation there, because I'm not sure I could fully explain how it actually used to work, because pretty much it was like, essentially it was the challenge system. So pretty much, like, if you were the top side, you played your grand final and you got beat, you had the right to replay. So that would have worked great for us in 2008 because we were the top side and Hawthorn beat us. We could have said, right,
we're playing you
play
next
us
week.
Again, play us again this time. And and Collingwood won quite a few of their flags that way.
Exactly. Well, I was going to say we did win in 1925. On the way to the big dance, we actually lost. So we lost the final. They played the final, which was the final, like the final of the Australian Open tennis. But if you had the right to challenge, you got to challenge the winner of the final in the grand final. So the final after the final kind of thing. That's my understanding of it. That yes, we lost, but we still got to challenge the team that won the whole thing, and we ended up beating them. And so we were premiers in 1925. And that's all we remember from that. And that doesn't matter. At the end of the day, we're a premier, and we've got the cup in our trophy cabinet. Who cares how we got there?
And then we had the 2 years with the round robin system as well, which was the first year. Right. And then they decided to bring it back in 1924 for another go, and then that was never seen again. But I think, in what I've read, that the reason they brought it back was mainly because of the dissatisfaction with the challenge system. People didn't like how it worked. The fans didn't like how it worked. They thought it was, it was too heavily weighted in favour of the team that finished on top of the ladder, and they needed something that gave, didn't so much disadvantage the top side, but gave, the other teams, a better chance of having some success should they make the finals.
I do remember a crash out video from our friend Catman after Geelong. Was it losing the prelim or losing the grand final? And he said we should have had the right to challenge. That wasn't an old rule. It was there. But yeah, no.
Well, I think that's what he was referring to. But
I think so. Yeah.
I will say that I don't know that challenging last year would have made may or may not have made a difference, but I'll tell you what, I would have liked the challenge system to be in 2008, because if we got another crack at those pricks, we would have killed them.
I reckon 1995 as well. That would have been nice to have another crack at Carlton that year. Yeah, but they abolished it. The right to challenge got abolished in 1931. Got rid of it. No more. Done. And Geelong was one of the beneficiaries of that back in 1925. The substitute. Can you believe the 19th man? They introduced a substitute in 1931. So, but it's like one person on the bench. So if you got injured, you'd know this. If you got injured, you come off and your day's done. You're not coming back on. It's not a interchange as such, on and off kind of thing, as many times as you want. It's like, no, you're off, you're done. And that was the actual rule, that you can only come off to permanently replace an injured player. But they just had one player that could do that. So I don't know how you'd feel being the 19th man back in the day. Probably how a lot of the players felt wearing the green vest for a little bit. And you might come on for a half, or you might not, or you might come on for 30 seconds like Mitch Nevitt, which could happen as well. And they probably exploited the rule as well. Oh, I've totally got a hamstring injury, and just to rest a player when you're 50 points up. I'm sure that happened a few times as well.
Well, to be fair, even well, actually, no. See what? I'll tell you. Even when they do you have when they brought the 20th man in? I can't. Yep. That was what year? What year did they bring the 20th man in?
1946.
Right.
So what's that? 15 years later. So they enjoyed that. They liked that rule, and they thought, let's get another one.
Yeah,
Kevin
like
Sheedy's dad probably brought that one in.
no, well, like basically the way that it worked, right? It was like and sort of and this and this is a good example of a plot, what you were just saying there about how what they would have done with the 19th man rule. It's like that's a perfect example of applying modern thinking to, you know, ancient history, if we could call it that.
Yep.
The real truth behind the 19th, like teams didn't want to use their 19th man. It was only for absolute emergency, like if a guy broke his leg, or in those, like did a knee, tore a hand, like if you tore a hamstring in those days, you were history, you know, sort of all these kinds of things. It was only so that you didn't, you know, so that if someone had an injury where they absolutely could not continue, that they could bring a bloke on. But let me tell you, if they didn't bring the guy on, they didn't have to pay him. Right, so they only wanted to play. They only wanted to put the 19th and 20th man on if they absolutely had to. Right,
wow.
Otherwise,
times were tough. Clearly,
yeah. Well, that was the thing. It's like they didn't want to put the blokes on because otherwise they had to pay another player.
That makes me think. I wonder if there was a situation where the poor clubs just decided, someone's come off with 10 minutes to go. Do we bring on the 19th bloke? Nah. But maybe you had to. Maybe if the guy came off, you absolutely had to. I don't know.
What they used to do, they would just plonk him in the forward pocket.
Paddy Dangerfield style. Yep. Just stick him in the pocket. Yep.
And look, in those days, the blokes would play through some pretty bloody serious injury. You know, broken jaws, broken ankles, you know, torn up knees, broken arms, all kinds of stuff that blokes in those days would have played through. Now, like if you like, there's you know, an example. I think it was the 1950 second semi. I think North fullback who was playing on John Coleman broke his ankle and refused to go off. Like he wouldn't come off. Like he played to a broken ankle. Yeah, that was back in the days when they had those big leather, like ankle high boots, right? So when he got his boot off, right, it was just full of blood. Like his sock was just drenched in blood, and like his boot was full of blood, but he wouldn't come off. So that was how they used to do. That was how they used to do it in those days. These days, the game would stop for 15 minutes. The green whistle would be out there, and sort of all of this stuff, you know.
The Gary Lyon rolling around on a stretcher situation, all that sort of stuff. I think that's probably. I think looking back, I think we don't want players going out there injured or playing out there injured, and yeah, we did see it in the grand final last year with Jez's broken arm. But grand final, you know, you just forget about what's right and wrong. You just want to win the game at the end of the day. You obviously do it within the rules, but you're just going to try and ignore the pain as long as you can, and try and lay the best tackle you've ever laid in your life that anyone's ever seen, that no one will ever talk about except Geelong supporters. And we frame it at the end of the day.
Yeah, so that was we'd like to be remembering that in the same context as like the Joel Corey smother or the Brad Ottens tackle in 2007 and stuff like that, but it wasn't to be.
Good segue. Speaking of tackles, the rules weren't very strict when you tackle a bloke and they'd drop the ball until 1939, where they adjusted the rule a little bit there to start rewarding the tackler. If you tackled a bloke and he dropped it in the tackle, you won a free kick. But before that, it was, you know, maybe not always paid in those situations. It's like a player would, it just got knocked out or whatever. They just kind of let it go for a fair bit. We spoke about the 20th man, or the second substitute, I should say. But rules applied the same as the other substitute. Again, not an interchange bench. It's just two players that you can bring on to replace injured players. I guess the game itself was probably getting a little bit faster, and Players were a bit more injury prone just due to the speed of the game, and the clubs and the comp probably recognised the need to have an extra player running around there. The under-19s came in 1946 as well, Horatio. It was, I think it might have even come in slightly earlier or slightly later, but it was like a separate competition, and then eventually the VFL sort of took it over and made it their own thing.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And that lasted for quite a while too, until the draft era sort of kicked in, and equalisation and all that, and the national comp. It sort of lasted for quite a while. I loved it. It was great waking up grand final morning and putting the under-19s on into the reserves and onto the big one. It was an absolute footy feast if you grew up in the 80s and the 90s. Absolutely terrific.
If I remember, it's a bit like it was a bit like. I think the way it's going to evolve is probably a bit like what's going to happen with the VFL, where it's just going to end up going back to the reserves.
I think so.
Eventually.
We've got the money now. We're better off financially.
I think that's the way it's heading. But pretty much, I think what happened was that teams were putting, were recruiting junior players and then putting them in local competitions.
Yeah.
So you could be playing against, it wasn't you weren't playing against another VFL side. You could be playing against, you could be playing against pretty much anybody who had a side, Upper Timbuktu West Demons or whatever, but that was how they did it, because in those days they had midweek leagues and they had Sunday leagues, so you could be playing for your work team and all that sort of stuff as well, to make a little bit of extra coin. So I mean, you'd have guys, if you were a young kid, in those days you could be playing 4 or 5 games of footy a week sometimes.
That's crazy. You train Tuesday, Thursday, maybe a Wednesday game or something like that if you could.
You'd be playing school footy, stuff like that. Yeah, so you could be playing. But I think basically it was all a bit hodgepodge, and the clubs just decided, hey, look, when they wanted to, just sort of align everything. And it used to be that pretty much, and I know this because my dad played under-19s for Carlton. Wherever the seniors and resis were playing, whoever they'll play against, they would play the under-19s at the other ground.
Oh, yeah.
So
like
for
cricket,
for example, if Carlton was playing North, seniors were playing North at Princes Park, the resis would be playing at Princes Park, and the under-19s would play at Arden Street.
You'd flip it. Yep, that makes sense. That makes sense. You can't play. I mean, you could play 3 curtain raisers, I guess, or 2 curtain raisers, but that would make sense to me. Might as well do that. It's interesting. Next one. We're in the 40s now, and this is the introduction of the 4 and 20 meat pie. They started to become quite well known around football stadiums. They monopolised it really at stadium catering across Victoria in the late 40s. But meat pies weren't a new thing in the game of football. You got to go all the way back to the 1850s. It was basically pie carts all over the shop, and it was clubs would have. It was really, really popular thing to eat at the footy or eat before or after games, and as the game sort of got on a little bit, clubs would have arrangements with like a local bakery and things like that to supply the pies. And and then 4 and 20 came along and took over and made a nice product, I have to say.
Yeah, hot dogs were the other thing. Like they just have a big 44-gallon drum there with your Savoys and that in there, and you just whack it in a roll and off you go.
Exactly.
You remember the peanut? Did you ever go to a game of Carlton with the Peanut Man? Peanut Man would just he'd walk along the boundary line and just, peanuts.
I was pissing myself laughing as you were telling me this story. Oh, sorry, you weren't telling me, you were telling Paul about it. And I was laughing on Saturday morning while I was doing some housework, just giggling at you telling us about the peanut story.
The Peanut Man that used to walk there, got me heating up coins with their cigarette lighters, pegging it at the poor old peanut guy.
Poor peanut bloke. We used to have blokes running up and down the aisles handing out. I mean, I don't even know when that went away. Maybe it still exists sometimes, but you used to you guys would run around up and down the aisle with a meat pie or a cold drink, hot pies, cold drinks. That's kind of got away in footy these days with all the stadiums kind of purpose built, or the interiors with catering all over the shop. Basically, you can't go anywhere without getting a beer or a pie or a souvlaki or whatever it is these days. You can basically buy anything. I think. I don't know. Even Kidinia Park, there's about 20 different options of food there. There's a restaurant there. It's crazy. So yeah, meat pies. The father-son, has that always been a thing? The father-son rule?
No, it hasn't. They brought that in for Ron Barassi.
Ron Barassi, who's sadly his dad passed away during World War II. So the league decided, let's do the right thing by Ron and let him play for the club that his dad played for. It kind of got a little bit more formalised after that, but not too long after that. But yeah, that was the beginning of it. Ron Barassi in 1949. The first.
The interesting thing with that is that he actually lived with Norm Smith, who the great Melbourne coach, lived with Norm Smith. Norm Smith didn't live in Melbourne zone.
Yep.
I'm trying to remember did he live in? He might have lived in, like, it was either whose zone? It was Richmond. It might have been Carlton zone, something like that he lived in. Didn't live in Melbourne zone, so that was why it's like doesn't get much more demon than young Junior here. How can we have him playing for anybody else?
Exactly. It's funny how that works sometimes. The year later, the start of the 1950 or thereabouts, we got the arrival of the first electronic siren or the electronic horn. So as I said, we had the big brass bell and we ding, ding, ding. But footy was getting pretty big by 1950, believe it or not. The crowds were huge. The crowds were loud and boisterous, and you could barely hear the bell anymore. So they decided, hang on, we've got to sort this shit out. We've got to get something that's a little bit louder than a little tinkle, tinkle. So in comes the electronic horn. And eventually it started at sort of one or two grounds, and then eventually I think got mandated by the league across all places down the track. Some of them I think sound a little bit different. Is it true that even today it sounds a little bit different, or at least in recent years? I don't know if it was necessarily the same sound, but
it's not standardized.
No, it's generally the same sound, but it's slight variations from ground to ground. It's not
depending on who made the system, I think.
Yeah, it's not the Mr. Whippy Van sort of sound or anything like that.
No, it's not like I don't know. I don't think they do it in they don't do it at AFL level, but if you go to games like locally and stuff, they have that siren that does the sort of rather than the big sort of foghorn sort of sound.
Yeah.
That sort of blast. It's that almost like the basketball siren.
Yeah. Yep. It's almost like the planes are coming and quick find shelter sort of stuff. It was Anyway, the suburban grounds are a little bit scary. I don't know. They're weird. The horns are weird there. Night footy. I touched on night footy just briefly before, but I don't know if you can correct me if I'm wrong here. But night footy first started in 1952. Because it was a bit weird, the AFL decided to have a round where they sent all the teams to play in other parts of Australia. So they sent Geelong and Essendon to play a game in Brisbane because we didn't have teams in Queensland. Didn't have teams in Queensland at the time, but it was a shit show. It was typical Brisbane weather. The torrential rain came down and they had to postpone the game. And the only spot to put it was a Monday night. So that was the first game played at night on a Monday night, Geelong and Essendon in Brisbane. A bit weird. And then that went okay. And I guess they sort of decided a few years later, let's make this a bit of a regular thing. I think you touched on, I don't know if you specifically touched on it, but the midweek sort of, I can't remember what the competition was. It was like a midweek sort of thing. Some night footy.
Yeah, I think it was 1959. They started a night competition that they played the 8 teams that didn't make the finals. Would play a knockout series at South Melbourne during the week.
What for? For money or what?
Yeah. They had a cash prize and
meat tray.
That, so. Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Different
No,
times, wasn't it?
yeah, they had. No, they had. Yeah, I mean, and that went for quite some time, pretty much until they decided to do the national night series.
Yeah.
Was it the who sponsored it first? It was like the Avco Cup or the Amco Cup or something like that. For
Ansett, maybe. Yeah.
no. This is like 1974, 75, 76,
Okay.
something like that. And then the AFL or the VFL at the time decided that they didn't like some of the rules. Some of the they didn't want to answer to the NFL as it was called at the time. So they had the breakaway competition in 77. And then they pretty much, said, okay, we're going to go back to this sort of, we'll go back to this national series, but we're calling the shots. It's the sort of national thing in name only. We're running it.
Interesting. I'd love to know what the spectators at the time thought about it. Was it a hit? Was it? Getting to my next point soon. Night footy. Oh, that's great. I love watching. Love sitting on the couch with a beer on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, watching a bit of footy. But we didn't get televised football games until 1956. The grand final coinciding with the Olympics in Melbourne that year. Television became a thing. What's this television bullshit? Yes, usually you'd either, if you didn't go to the football, and you didn't have a radio, a wireless, as it was back then, you didn't really know what was going on, or you'd look at it in the paper the next day, that kind of thing, and you'd see who kicked goals and who didn't kick goals. But yes, the grand final, 1956, was the first televised live game of footy, legally, I suppose. I can't imagine they would have been able to the cameras weren't existing everywhere. But yeah, clubs weren't too excited about the idea of football games being televised and how that might impact on gate takings. Do you know about that? Like, how do the clubs tend to react to maybe the fear of maybe fans wouldn't come to games if they could just sit at home and watch it on telly?
That's why there wasn't a live telecast of the grand final until 1977, because it was a bit like, I don't know, you probably remember, like with the Test cricket, or like they're having a one-dayer. Like, you get to watch like the first 2 hours. If it was at the G, you get to watch the first 2 hours, and then it was a blackout for the rest of the day. You had to go and put it on the radio.
I couldn't believe that as a kid growing up. Like, where's why? Oh no, you got to put the radio on now. What the fuck? Come on.
I mean, even now, if you're in Melbourne, you can't get some of these games live on TV. Like,
well, good. We're going to the news. Blah blah blah. We're paying an extra 30 minutes. Sorry, Channel 7's got their news on. So bad luck. Bad luck.
Yeah, I mean, that was always the talk. We're worried about we're worried about it affecting the gate and all that kind of thing. But we're now at the point where the gate is the thin end of the wedge, so they don't care.
Yeah. And the league didn't get $500 million from ABC to have the rights to televise the game. It wasn't like that back then.
And the rest.
Yeah, and clubs were, as you said, like afraid to bring a substitute player on because they'd have to pay him. Money was a concern, obviously, and clubs were probably just hanging in there to survive year to year. It wasn't an easy thing. The late 50s. This is the thing I hate it. I hate this thing. I hate banners. Not a super. The cheer squads are okay, but they're a bit nuffy. But I hate banners. I don't like banners at all. Who came up with the banners? Banners started appearing in the late 50s. The clubs started, pulling together cheer squads, and the cheer squads would sort of create a banner, and it was very, very basic banners. It wasn't sort of what you see these days, with slogans and big sort of poles that they'd sort of hold up and raise with ropes and all that. Very, very basic. But yeah, they'd run through it, and that would be fun. But I absolutely hate banners. I don't know. I'd be happy to get rid of them. I'm happy to get rid of the banner. Rather a light show, a bit of music, that kind of thing. Any thoughts on the banners? Do you like banners? I don't know.
I love the banner.
You love the banner.
Always love the banner.
I don't burst through it anymore, though.
Well, there was the time I was and it still happens occasionally. Like there's a time I was at a game out at Waverley. It was Carlton and Richmond, and right when Richmond were running out on the ground, like they got their banner up, the players were about to run out, and it just started hammering, classic, Waverley, VFL Park squall. And by the time the players got to run through the banner, right, it's just sticky tape with these little dags of black streamer hanging off them. So they ended up just running through a bunch of sticky tape on poles because the crepe paper was just destroyed.
That's just like the 2018 grand final. Remember when Nathan Buckley had to console the Magpie? The banner got ripped to shreds. I think it was the 2018 one, and it just got ripped to shreds by the elements. And the cheer squad lady was crying her eyes out, and Buckley's like hugging her. It's like, it's okay. It's just a banner.
There was another one. I was at a game, 1988. We're playing Carlton at Waverley. Nice, it was a nice day, but it was a bit windy. And Carlton had got the banner up, and as I put the banner up, one side has just gone, just completely ripped right off the pole. And they've dropped the pole, and it hit Don Dorotich in the back of the head. Like it beamed him. And
oh well.
And that was the end of him for the day. He had to be replaced. He had to be replaced because he bloody got it dislocated his shoulder or something like that. So they had to get the emergency out because John Dorotich got hit by the banner pole.
Fucking cheer squads, and yeah, it costs the club money to have to bring a substitute player on. I'm assuming so.
Well, that there's been the odd one of guys sort of tripping over in the races. They're coming out and doing their hammy or popping a knee or something like that and having to be replaced. But that's the one and only time I've ever heard of a bloke being hit by the banner pole and having to pull out.
I'd love to know if there's, not that there's probably anyone still alive that was 40 or 50 years old. That sort of age you get to when you start getting a bit grumpy. Everything's like, oh, this is crap. Not like my day. I'm in the mid to late 40s at the moment, but I reckon there'd be people around the time that they brought in the banners that were like, what's this shit? Come on. It's a bit like playing music after goals now. It's like, what's this shit? Get rid of the Macarena. Get rid of the Texas Hold'em or whatever they call it. What's the Jeremy Cameron one? I reckon there would have been grumpy bastards back then too, whinging about the new innovations that the cheer squad was trying to bring in.
Well, I mean, in those days, you could see them the footage of teams running out for the grand final and stuff like that. Used to just be they'd get rolls of coloured streamers, in team colours, and just weave them, you will weave on the entrance of the race, and you would just run through the streamers.
Yeah, that was it.
And then it started to get into this real. Then it was just, instead of having it on the race, it was on a couple of poles, and then it went out of control. It went out of control from there.
People getting knocked out.
and that was right on the back of Dora getting busted for indecent exposure too.
God.
No, he was having a bit. Well, there's a story behind that, but yeah, it wasn't. We were hanging shit on him at school about that particular incident. It turns out that he was actually quite literally taken one for the team because a certain teammate of his was shagging a couple of birds in the car, a couple of things down, and was trying to distract the cops so that his wife wouldn't find out.
Oh God, the things you did, I suppose, back then.
Good teammate.
There you go. Now, as I said, TV came in the 50s, and then 1961 we got our first. We're used to sort of turning the telly on and watching a bit of AFL 365 or whatever it is, or the Sunday Footy Show or whatever. But we got our first footy panels, the World of Sport on Channel 7. That started to turn into a better kind of a must-see viewing. Really, you get your footy fix on a Sunday morning, a bit of a ritual for footy lovers. Some old footy players or footy coaches, personalities, I suppose, talking about the games that were played, because most of the games were done and dusted pretty much by a Saturday. Back in the day, when every game was played on a Saturday, and then you'd come together on Sunday morning and you'd turn the telly on and you'd watch that, and then you'd I don't know if that was on or before or after church back in the day when a lot of people used to go to church, but it was on in the mornings, on Sunday mornings, and probably when you got home, I'm guessing, for those that sort of did that sort of thing back in the day. Now, did they always keep stats? Like we get like you get your AFL Live app now, and you just check, how many pressure acts and how many.
Nothing like it is today. They used to keep them I think at club level they would. It was more of a club thing.
Yep.
Back in the day, wasn't. I don't think it was like fully like official like league stats. That didn't come until later, but I think a lot of clubs would a lot of clubs kept their own records in those days.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. There was around about the mid 60s. I don't have the exact year, but a couple of data nerds decided that it's pretty boring just counting how many goals and who kicked them, that kind of thing. So they wanted to understand it a little bit more. So they began sitting in the stands with the stopwatches and the clipboards and manually started telling how many kicks and handballs and marks and free kicks for every single player. And then, that sort of became a bigger thing as the years went on, till you got to the point where champion data came in, and they really sort of revolutionized things with GPS devices and all that sort of stuff with technology as we see today. But I can't watch a game of footy these days without having the stats in front of me. I don't know how people back then did it. You'd have I guess everyone had a record back then, the magazine, and you'd sort of mark your own who kicked the goal and whatnot, but you didn't have time to, that was a handball, that was an effective kick, that was a clanger. No one was kind of doing that back in the day.
Well, I think I suspect, having read a little bit on this subject over the years, I suspect where where it went from sort of being unofficial like club stats to proper like either league sanctioned stats or the newspaper stats or whatever. In the waffle, I think it was in 1962, there was talk that Hayden Bunton Jr. had 63 kicks in a game.
I heard that, yeah.
63 kicks in a game, right?
Well, the little mark ones, the little ones, the 2-yard ones.
Look, he was a bloody good player, so it wouldn't have surprised me. But that was the thing. It was like, well, who was counting them? And a lot of these, and we're talking waffle here. They weren't doing. They were probably doing one game a week over there. So, and it probably wasn't that one. So I think there was, because, you would hear these stories of, like one of, this is the thing that doesn't happen anymore, that I sort of, they do still kind of, like you hear it in the NFL, but they have those famous games that have got names like the Holy Roller or the Immaculate Reception, and sort of all those things that happen. Famous games that have got names because of things that happened in them. We used to have a thing where it's like, if somebody had an obscene amount of kicks or someone took an obscene amount of marks, so like basically the game would get named after it. So it was like if somebody mentioned, there was a Carlton bloke called Alec Duncan, I think it was, took 29 marks in a game or something like that, and they actually gave him the ball with a plaque, to commemorate it, and that was what they called it. It was called Duncan's match, And then
Tokens,
and then Ron Clegg did something similar. Ron Clegg won a Brownlow for South, did something similar in a match. A few years later, took 20 odd 30 marks, something like that in a game, and that was often referred to as Clegg's match. So I sort of miss that we don't sort of have, we don't have those kinds of things anymore, and that you're not everything's visible now, so you're not sort of getting those urban legends that you used to get a little bit more.
You give every kick to the same player because that's the only player that you knew. Like, I'll give it to him. Oh, he probably kicked it. Or tell you what, if I was doing the stats for the Geelong, Tom Atkins would get 25 tackles a game. Because exactly. That's a tackle. That's a tackle. Yeah, that's a tackle. Hang on, I'm writing that one down. Oh, he got an arm on him. That's a tackle.
Yeah, exactly.
Question. Sorry, you go.
No, and I think it's like, as Brent Croswell once said, it's like your fame is made by the stories of others.
Yep.
So, he was sort of the belief is like, I probably didn't do half the things that people think I did, but it's a good yarn. So, his reputation, and a lot, and that would have been how a lot of it was. Whereas these days, you don't get that. You don't get that sort of thing because everything is there. You can watch every game, every minute of every game. You can analyze the living crap out of it if you want to.
Yep. We know a lot more about the game than maybe that's not fair to say that, but we have so much more access to footage and commentary and an analysis that maybe people got 30, 40 years ago, that we probably know footy a little bit better and sort of can think about things in different ways. I want to ask you this question, and don't want to risk getting too derailed, but is footy better with stats or worse? I mean, just take yourself back to pre-stats, mid 60s, before we did stats. Is it, like you talk about, legends and myth and all that sort of stuff? Is it better to sort of not know, just use the eye test every time and not look at the stats? I can't help it. I'm addicted to looking at the stats during the game, but I'd like to think that maybe if I didn't have it in front of me and just watched it as a pure spectacle, I'd probably enjoy it more. I enjoy actually not doing fantasy footy these days for that very reason. I'm just constantly obsessed about this bloke getting a kick or not getting a kick, and that's made watching footy a lot more enjoyable for me.
Well, I'll let you go on, because I think that what you're asking here is going to come into something that I will talk about after you've gone through the changes.
All right. If I don't bring it up again, and we'll come back around to it, because there's a lot of things that could be better, have gotten better. Not every change has been a bad thing. Some changes have been good things as well, which is kind of what this segment's really driving at. Now, 1965, the Richmond Football Club decided, we're sick of Punt Road. It's too small, it's too cramped, it's too shitty. We're going to move to the MCG and share it with the Melbourne Football Club. And that was the first time. That was probably the beginning of clubs starting to shift away from their traditional venues and becoming co-tenants. So there's at the moment in Victoria, you've got Marvel Stadium, the MCG as the two big ones, and then Kardinia Park, which we're the only ones that use it. And then you've got your Adelaide teams playing at Adelaide Oval and Perth playing at Optus. It's a bit weird up in the northern states. They've all got their own venue for some weird reason, but which doesn't make sense to me, but it is what it is. But 1965 was the beginning of that. It's over 60 years ago we started doing that. So bit of a shame, because the little suburban grounds were fun. I probably have to say I never went to Victoria Park to see a Collingwood game. I'm kind of glad I didn't have to put up with the mob there. Did you go to? I think you might have mentioned you saw some Essendon games or some suburban ground footy.
The only grounds I didn't go to South. I went to games at South, but not to watch South. I've been to games at the Junction Oval, but not AFL games. And I've watched cricket at Junction Oval many times.
Oh, that'd be good.
I've watched cricket at Punt Road, but that was obviously before my time. yeah, the grounds that I watched senior games at, Footscray, St Kilda, Collingwood, Essendon, Carlton, MCG, Waverley. I think that's it, and Geelong, of course, but we're still there.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit different, isn't it? Now the stadium's
It's
completely
a lot
different.
different now to what it was when I first went down there. I can tell you.
One thing I didn't say before earlier in the show that you used to be able to sneak into footy games at 3/4 time for free. So if you couldn't afford to go,
leave the gate. You didn't have to sneak in; they would open the gates. They'd open the gate.
You just go in, and that was the MCG as well. You just walk in. These days, you need in. There's always people standing there, and obviously security risks, and the world's a different place in terms of the potential threats that are out there. That maybe, there's always shit going on in the world, but it's a little bit more complex these days. Anyway, let's just say that. All right, let's continue on. So, the traditional home grounds moved away from there. 1969. I couldn't believe this one. If you kicked it out in the fall before 1969, it's just let's throw it back in. But no, they decided if you kick it out in the fall, it's a free kick now from 1969. I couldn't believe the umpire would just simply throw in and run in and throw it back in. That's crazy. Like 1969, it took for that to happen. What's going on before then? And now, obviously,
if I'm not mistaken, I'll actually have a look at this, but I'm pretty sure they went back and forth on that a couple of times before they settled on it.
You're probably right. Yep.
That was I'm pretty sure that they had the rule about like the last touch. It was just if it went out of bounds, whoever touched it last, it was a free kick. They tried that, I think, in the 50s briefly, got rid of it, went back to what they'd been doing before. And then they might have brought the out on the full. They might have brought the out on the full rule in again briefly for a period at some point there before they brought it in full time. But I know because I was hoping you would actually bring this up because I'm pretty sure they went back and forwards on how to go with the last kick out of or hand pass or whatever out of bounds. Because when they were talking about it, it's like, but they've done this before at least a couple of times in league history, not for long, but they've done it before. So
the other thing
it's the same with the ruck. Like the centre square and the ruck rule and stuff like that, they've gone back and forth on that because they had the square, then they had the diamond, and then they went back to the square.
Forgot about the diamond. I was going to say that was the next one, 1970, the centre square. You used to be able to kick a goal, and just there was no sort of restrictions on who would be around the centre bounce. There were obviously no 666 rule back then, but you could, if the game's tight, you could just put everyone down back, or you could put everyone you could just jump on the ball. 36 blokes just jumping on the ball after the bounce, but they finally cleaned that up a little bit. So I reckon that was, and they said they might have tweaked things a little bit. They're probably going to tweak the lasso rule that came in this year. You can imagine they'll tweak that in the off season, and it'll be kick actual disposals, proper disposals rather than incidental off his shin or off his knee kind of stuff. That's clearly credit to them. They're not making knee-jerk changes during the season. There's probably no need to. Let's just wait till the season's done and we'll fix it. We'll fix it then. But you can imagine those little tweaks probably happen as major rule changes get brought in.
I think that is one that needs to happen because I don't think it's in the so-called spirit of the rule.
No, exactly right. I think I don't think there's too many people objecting to a slight tweak to that. What I didn't mention earlier, which I find I had a laugh at when I read this one, that when we had one central umpire way back, we had one central umpire, and if the ball went out of bounds, that poor bugger would have to run after it, and he would have to throw it back in again, and then just keep running back. And it's like, thank God the play was so congested back in the day, and it wasn't pinging around the ground from one end to the other, and within 15 seconds, and the umpire would have to go throw it in again.
the other thing too was that the game was a lot more stop-start in those days too.
That's
So
the point. Yeah,
if
that's the point.
if a player took a mark, they would go back and kick. So sort of playing on wasn't something that was done as much, anywhere near like not like it is now. Where it's just you're kind of looking to play on at every opportunity. That wasn't how the game was that was the tempo of the game for quite some years. So
Exactly.
The umpire probably could have done that for a while, but once they sort of tweaked some of those rules that you were talking about earlier there, it wasn't going to be possible.
And it just goes to show, like when we tweak rules these days, it generally means we've got to tweak other rules, and that's always been a thing. We try to make the game faster, 60 years ago, and that required, okay, shit, the game's getting too fast now. We need an extra umpire on the field. The game, we've got to figure out how to, we can't officiate games like this when it's moving too quickly. But it was for the greater good. I mean, the game was getting a bit ugly, and as we know, teams do it right now. They figure out a way to sort of manipulate current rules, and they were doing that back then as well. So, 1971, Horatio, the yellow balls. We finally got yellow footies. Sharon decided to manufacture and debut the first yellow leather football specifically for night matches. It was much easier to see. I think they might have used a white ball briefly. You might know more about this one, and it used to get scuffed up, and it was pretty hard to see in night games. But the yellow one popped a little bit more, a bit like the pink ball in cricket. Just pops a little bit.
Yeah, it's like what happens with the white ball and the one dayers. Like it just wasn't, it was just grey after a certain period of time, which is why they ended up having to have I think they basically ended up having to use a ball. They had two new balls, so they'd have one ball for each end, pretty much just to minimise the damage on the ball.
Yeah,
because it wouldn't. Yeah, if just you couldn't see it.
I couldn't remember when. I remember we used to have brown footies, and I couldn't find the year that we started dyeing the leather red. I don't know if you know roughly when that started happening, but we've always just assumed that we've had a red footy. I know some of the old photos, you see the brown balls, and you're like, is that just the photo? Were the footies actually brown, or was it just the photo, not sort of being full color or something like that? But we actually started dyeing the leather red, and it gave that sort of traditional red footy feel, the day footy that we get. We actually these days we use more of the yellow ball than the red ball, which I don't mind. I'm quite happy with the yellow ball in a day game as well, for all I care. It doesn't really matter. Sort of stands out.
As long as you can see the pill, that's the main thing.
You can see it. You can see it in all conditions. All right, finals 1972. Did you like the Final Five system?
I loved the Final Five system.
The minor premier got a week off, and all the other. Don't ask me how the rest of the final series went, but I think it was like second versus fifth, and third versus or whatever.
It was some other. It was fourth versus fifth would play the elimination final. Second versus third would play the qualifying final. The loser of fourth and fifth was out. The winner of second and third would play the top side the next week in the second semi. The first semi, the winner of the elimination final would play the loser of the qualifying final. And then the winner of the second semi would go straight into the granny. The loser would play the winner of the first semi in the prelim, and then the winner of the prelim would play the winner of the second semi in the grand final.
I don't mind the idea of the minor premier getting the week off, but everything else just seems incredibly confusing about that. So I'm kind of glad they moved away from the final five rule. Obviously, in a competition with 18 teams, soon to be 19, you probably want your finals to be a little bit more than that. But we didn't have that many teams. It would have been 14 or something teams back then, thereabouts, I'd say, in the 70s.
Well, let's see. I liked the five better than I liked the four. Now the five came in when I was born, the year I was born. So I was never like at VFL level. I never had the I never had the final four, but the final four still happened like in country. I moved up the country where they still had the final four system in most leagues at that point in time. So it basically meant that the top two sides would get a week off when you had the four. Yep. So pretty much third and fourth would play each other first week of the finals. Then second week of the finals, you would have the second semi, or was it? Or did I've got my finals book here. I'm just going to have a quick look at the dates on a couple of these.
I'm just thinking of local sport like tennis and other types of sports where, like, it's at a local level, there's usually a top four. It's usually first versus fourth, second versus third, and the winners go through to a grand final. In all the social sport I've played, that's generally been the case. And but we want a final series that goes for 4 or 5 weeks, don't we? So that's probably a reason to make it extend a little bit longer than maybe what it should. So
no, that's how they did it. It was the first semi-final, the first week of the finals. Second semi was the second week of the finals, and the prelim was the third week. Grand final was the fourth week. So there would be one final every week of the finals. Now, can you imagine that happening these days?
I'm just highlighting Janko's comment here. My mum told me back in 1975 that they used to put colour film over the TV to eliminate the black and white footage. 50 years later now, how things have changed. Yep, you need a 70-inch telly, 8K, all that sort of stuff. We don't have 8K. I don't even think we've got 4K, but I can't imagine watching a game of footy on a little telly these days. It is what it is. Yeah. Now, this is one that upset me, even though I never saw this guy play, but it pissed me off. There was a 10-year rule brought in 1973. If you played 10 years at your club, you were allowed to move to another club without getting clearance. Now, tell us about how clearances used to work. Not the clearance from a centre bounce or whatever, but if you wanted to play for another club prior to 1973, how did that work? I'm sure you know.
Basically, it was pretty, because the clearance rule, as it used to work, it was pretty much the same thing with when you wanted to get someone for an interstate club. Like, for example, Ross Glendenning played for North. He wanted to come over in 1976, and East Perth, his waffle club, wouldn't clear him.
Yep.
And he basically sat out of football for a year so that he could get a clearance from the waffle to North. So he basically missed out on North's premiership in 77 because he was sitting out, because he couldn't get a clearance.
Yep.
So that was pretty much the thing, is that you had to get a clearance, and that would involve a sum of money. And the clubs would have to agree
from one club to the other. Is that exchange?
Right. Yep. Okay. There would be an exchange of a clearance fee. Depending on the quality of your player, that could be $500. It could be $10,000. It just depended on the player. So pretty much what sort of brought the 10-year rule on was that players were starting to say, hey, I'm basically, it was starting to become a little bit more professional in those days. So the demands on players' time was a little bit more, there was a little bit more required. The game was growing, bringing a lot more money, and the players weren't seeing any of that money. They were still getting paid like it was World War II.
Show me my money.
Yeah. So, and I mean, look, it's fair enough. I think they're the stars of the show. They're the ones putting on the show.
Yep.
If they weren't out there, we wouldn't. The clubs wouldn't be making any money. So,
and they still only get 30% of the AFL's revenue still, even today. They're still haggling over what counts as revenue now. So it's part of that's sort of topical at the moment with the CBA, but totally another subject. But I understand it. Like your Dougie Wades of the world, like obviously he's just coming close to retirement, a bit like Lachie Neale is for Brisbane, and wants to make a bit of coin on his way out. And why wouldn't you? A chance of winning a premiership, which Dougie Wade did when he went to North. Still a Geelong legend, but unfortunately, yeah, he was able to use that role and move without a clearance.
Just using that example, like there weren't that many players. There weren't that many players that moved. I think the main sort of quality players like Georgie Bishop for Footscray went to Collingwood. Carl Dietrich went from St Kilda to Melbourne. And then, of course, you had the famous North situation where they basically went hard and they went and got 3 club captains and Doug, if you, I don't know if you ever heard Doug Wade talk about it, but he was basically like, look, they wanted to speak to him. He said, look, I'll have a listen. I'll have a listen to what you've got to say. And if I'm not mistaken, he was in a business selling ladies. It might have been selling lingerie or something like that with Sam Newman.
All right.
And he wasn't that keen. He actually was going to stay at Geelong until they basically said, well, if you sign up now, you can have this. And he said, and then he's like, I hadn't seen so much money in my life. And so they said, look, you take this, right? And he said, look, I'm going to go back to Geelong, right? Let me have a think about it, right? So he went back to Geelong, and again, it was a bit of a Greg Williams type situation.
Yep.
He went back to Geelong, and he said, "Look, North have just offered me this to play for them for the next, however long, to sign up with them. What, can you match this offer, or can you?" And they're like, "No, we're not doing that." So he ended up playing for North.
Bit of like a restricted free agency type of thing, sort of back then. Can you match the offer? Sort of. But yeah, that was a very attractive.
Well, it wasn't even can you match the offer. It was he would have, if Geelong had said, we'll pay. I can't remember how much he asked Geelong to stay. But he said, look, North have offered me 10, I think it was 10 grand. It's like they've given me 10 grand cash.
A lot of money back then.
I've got 10 grand cash to cross over there next year. But if you pay, if you're willing to pay me X amount, I will stay. And they would, they're like, no, we're not going to do that. So he went to North.
We weren't much good in the 70s, early 70s, were we? I think we'd sort of had our time in the 69 or whatever, the late 63 and that sort of premiership period, and then it sort of faded away for about 10 or 15 years until Gary Ablett Seniors appeared on the scene some years later.
One final in the 70s.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, it was the same. A similar thing happened with, with Greg Williams. With Greg Williams was out of contract, and Sydney, the Swans offered him 300 grand a season to go up there, and he was on $45,000 a year at Geelong. He went back to Geelong and said, "Look, this is what the Swans are offering me. You give me $5 grand more. You give me $50,000 a year, right?
Yeah,
and I'll stay."
Nope.
And we couldn't dig up the $5,000 to keep Greg Williams at the club.
Geez, we nearly went under a few times even after that. So I don't know. That might have put us under just coming up with the money. I'm not sure. Let me go through a few more things. So 73, the centre square came in. And as you said, we had the diamond at one point as well. And we probably sort of back and forth tweaked it a little bit over the time. But as I said, players could kick a goal. They could all sprint back to the centre circle to form a really massive, chaotic huddle around the two ruckmen. Here's one that we kind of assume just has always happened today. When you get your tickets to the footy, you get your seat number, you get your row number, there you go. That's where I'm sitting today. Back then, it was like a mad rush. You get it, including grand finals. You get it. They open the gates and you just race to where you wanted to sit to. 120,000 through the gates one time, and it was just a absolute schmozzle. But yes, in the mid 1970s, we started to do ticket seat allocations for the really big events like your grand finals and some of the major big finals and so forth. That was kind of like the beginning of it. It hadn't sort of fully taken over, but I guess that was the first sort of sign that we were starting to sort of head in that direction to sort of manage some of the do a bit of the crowd control sort of stuff and to give people fair access to good seats and all that sort of stuff. But speaking of good seats, in 1975, Ron Barassi decided he didn't like his seat on the bench at ground level, and he decided to go up into the stands and thought he might get a better view up in the stands, and decided to coach from there with a walkie-talkie for a little bit. And then, sure enough, every other coach had the copied his idea, and before you knew it, was it Neil Curley from South Australian coach? He might have been the first one to set up a glass, the typical coach's box that we're kind of used to seeing these days, something like that. And then it sort of really took off and made a bit of a comeback in recent years, coaching from the bench. But Ron Barassi sort of started it all off with the coach's box up in the sky.
Well, I think, yeah. I mean, the difference with that is that in those days you might have had one assistant coach.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas now you've got a panel of coaches. So basically, you're going to have communication with the guys that are up in the stands. So you can get down, as a head coach, if you feel like you need to get down and get a feel for the game and sort of what's happening, sort of being closer to the action, you're still going to have your guys that can sort of see, get a broader look at what's going on around the ground, as opposed to what you could see when you're standing right on the sideline. Whereas in those days, you couldn't, you didn't have as many assistants and stuff that could do that for you. So if you wanted to get that kind of view, you had to do it yourself.
It all costs money, doesn't it? I mean, these unless you were doing it as a volunteer, and maybe some of the assistant coaches were volunteers potentially. I don't know, but
some of them were. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Everything, there's more money, as you mentioned, the more money coming into the game, and everyone's got their hand out for a couple of bucks, and I imagine that was probably a thing as well. Now we're 80 years in, Horatio. We're 80 years in, and we've still got one field umpire on the ground. So in 1976, we finally decided, all right, we probably need to help the umpire out. We need to add a second field umpire. So in comes the second field umpire. Clearly that helped manage the game. Still a fair bit of running to be done in the game. The 70s was like, bash and crash and run. It was a very athletic, very high speed. The game was really exciting. I mean, I know we talk about the 90s, but every time I think about the 70s, I think just the long hair and the players running up and down the wing, kicking long goals and bashing and crashing, and still having a dart at half time and all that sort of quarter time and all that. But it was it was an exciting brand of footy back then, and don't know how the umpire would have kept up with it if it had gone on much longer. But that would have been a big change back in the days. Like, why the hell do we need two umpires? Surely they probably not communicating very well. A bit like if we make a change now with four umpires, you're trying to figure out how to make these guys work together as a unit and get the decisions right, and they still probably can't. But it would have been a bit of a change for the umpiring ranks to sort of have a colleague with you doing that as well. 1970s, I'm just going to start whipping through more of the modern ones a little bit quicker, just conscious of time and all that as well. But 1977, we got the interchange bench, the traditional interchange bench. So we went from having two substitutes. As I said, you've got to replace an injured player, and once you're off, you're off. And then to allow two interchange players, so you could bring them on and off at any point during the game. Now, you probably know this better than me. I'm not sure how coaches used it in the early days. Like, you drag a player, maybe they went back on, maybe they didn't, kind of thing, but might have been up to the coach and how he's feeling about that particular player's performance sometimes. But yeah, I think the intention was that, yes, you could use it as many times as you wanted to. You had a couple of players to bring on and off. Is that my correct read on that? That some coaches kind of liked it and used it that way?
Yeah, it's like it was still, look, Just going back to talking about players that have played for, when we do this show, and there's always like the players that have played for both, the club that we're playing that week, both clubs. When we did the Carlton game, and I was like, oh, here's what you forgot: the bloke that's got more premierships than kicks in his career, Mario Bortolotto.
Yep.
He didn't get on in the 1981 grand final. He sat on the bench the whole game. They didn't even bring him on at all.
Did you get a medal?
So yeah, some of it was disciplinary, some of it was just to, maybe give a bloke a chop out, or whatever. But yeah, when I was a kid, you could have a bloke sitting on the bench the whole game, not get on at all.
I actually don't mind it. And hear me out. This is very extreme, but I like the idea of the whole list being able to play on any given day. But I don't like the interchange. I mean, I prefer it where you come off, you're done for the day, a bit like they do in the soccer, you're off, but you can make as many changes as you want. I mean, I don't know how many players you can take into a game, but I prefer just like, until you actually take the field, doesn't count as an actual game. But anyway, that'll never happen. I think the interchange is here to stay, but rather than the substitute sort of system. But I kind of like the idea of, especially when the game gets more money coming into it, and we can afford to take 30 bucks on an aeroplane. I can't see why not. But we've still got that seconds comp as well. And unless we get a reserves comp up and running that plays curtain raisers in the same, I guess, location, if not at the same ground, then moving players back and forth, moving large numbers of players back and forth on the off chance that they might play, it's probably not realistic at the moment anyway. State of Origin, same year, 1977. Now, this, you might sort of disagree with some of this, but I believe there were games played, but the rules around residency were not super tight prior to 1977. I think you had to.
No, it was basically whatever league you played in.
Exactly. And then it became the state that you're born in. There's probably some slight things around that, but yeah.
Well, basically, what it was I can't remember the name of the fella who pretty much, but it was a West Australian fella, basically, and it came back to this thing of like, we would get a lot of Victoria at that stage. South Australians didn't tend to come over very often, but we had a lot. We always had a lot of West Australians come across, and it was and that's the thing. If you were a West Australian and you were playing the VFL and there was a state game, you played for Victoria. The same as like there would be the odd Victorian go over and play in the Waffle, so you could play for you'd be like Kevin Murray, for example. He was a great Fitzroy player. He went over, took up a contract to captain coach, I think it was East Perth, for 3 years in the middle of his career. And he went over there and he played for WA, even though he was Victorian. Yeah. And had, I could get even captain Victoria prior to going over there. But he went over there and he played when he played state footy, he played for WA. So that's how it was prior to State of Origin. And it was basically if we had all our blokes, we had all our best blokes, we beat you guys.
Yeah, fair enough.
And that first game they did. They belted us by 94 points.
Exactly. And then we better take this seriously. But yeah, I mean, way back decades prior to that, as you said, state games could have been played, but it wasn't as easy to sort of do that. Like, I mean, yes, we had planes, but it wasn't like it is today, where you just jump on a plane and before you know it, you're in another state. It wasn't as simple as that, and it wasn't as cheap as it is now either. So it required a little bit more cost and organisation involved with that. And yes, it would make sense that if you're living in it, you're playing in a league, playing the VFL, that you're playing for Victoria. That would make sense.
Well, they had that. That was why they tended to have carnivals in those days, so that everybody could get on a train and go wherever they needed to go, and you would play your rep footy sort of in one fell swoop.
Can you imagine just the chaos that those players would have got up to on those carnival trips, like the piss ups and
Oh,
the hot fire?
I've heard some stories, man. I've heard some stories.
That's one for a post-game live show towards the end. Well, we'll have to hear a few of those. All right, I'll whip through some really quickly and jump in at any point if there's anything you want me to sort of discuss. 1978, we finally got the 50-meter line, and we didn't have that previously. It wasn't really a rule change. It just obviously
No, 50-meter line came in 88.
Sorry, I might have got a typo there. So 88
Yeah.
for that. But yeah, it didn't really change the rules or anything like that. It just kind of helped in terms of positioning and marking, distance and things like that. But I think it looks a lot better. It's definitely an improvement. I hate watching footage of old games where you can't see the line. It's sort of rubbish.
Well, if you go back and just refer back to the state of origin, WA had a 25-meter line and a 50-meter line.
No, too many lines.
In the waffle, yeah, they had two lines, and you'll see it in some of those state games played in WA during the 80s. You'll actually see it.
I've been banging on about this one for years, and I'm not going to make a point of it. I'd get rid of the goal square and just have a semicircle from point post to point post, and that's where you kick out from. I don't know what the goal square is all about. It's a bit weird. Everything's curved on an AFL, including the ball itself. I'd rather just have a semicircle from point. But anyway, I digress. That's my thing that I guarantee will come in one day. National expansion. South Melbourne moves to Sydney, the first team to take the first step towards a national competition. South Melbourne moves to Sydney in 1982. And then a South Melbourne Sydney player named Silvio Foscini.
Silvio Foscini
Decided, fuck this, living in Sydney. I want to move. I want to move back to Melbourne for family reasons. Obviously back then it was, unless you'd played 10 years, it was not that easy to make the move or whatever. And you still need clearances for the most part. So he took the VFL to the Supreme Court. And
that was partially in response to there had been earlier with Paul Morwood was one of the went without a clearance.
Yep.
There was a fair bit of crap that went down with that. So that was when Silvio took him to court, so that there wasn't there wasn't all this BS, with sort of getting points docked and all that sort of stuff, because that's what was believed that there was another case that St Kilda was involved in where they lost some premiership points that I think were later reinstated. But, over some clearance issues and stuff like that. But, he basically went to court and said, look, this is restraint of trade. I want to play for St Kilda. I don't want to, when I saw basically his argument was, look, when I signed my contract, this club was in Melbourne. Now this club's in Sydney, and I don't want to live in Sydney. So,
but it opened the floodgates, didn't it? And you said the words I was about to say, the restraint of trade, and that just became a big thing around that time. Players were sort of, wanting a bit more freedom, a bit more movement, wanting to make, other clubs were prepared to pay more in some cases as well. So the clubs had way too much power back then. And, some people at the time would say, we didn't really want the players to have any more power. It's the club. The football teams belong to the supporters, belong to the people, but the players didn't have a lot of say in anything really in those days.
Well, look, I go back to the case of Ross Glendinning. One of the best, key position players I've ever seen. Had to sit out a year of footy because he couldn't get a clearance.
Exactly.
It's ridiculous.
Absolutely ridiculous. Yep. It's like, I want to leave my current employer where I work now. Great, but you can't work anywhere else for a year, so good luck to you. Absolutely doesn't make sense, does it? But anyway, we didn't really think of a footy club as a workplace because it was had its origins in amateurism back in the day. So sort of we've gradually come around to the idea of it being a profession over the years, especially as we started to head into the 80s and 90s when it became a part-time thing where you might have made a little bit of nice coin on the side to you're making a living out of this. So that's kind of the way the game went. The mid-'80s, we got the salary cap for the first time. We stopped the wealthy clubs just buying all the good players. Carlton, I'm looking at you. Strict salary cap, the total player payments came in. And then not long after that, I think the year or two after that, we got the national draft as well. So we really started to lean heavily into equalisation. So this the early 80s to mid 80s was the beginning of obviously a move to a national competition and everything that goes with that, trying to make it fair for everyone, not just where all the talent lies in Victoria. Therefore, as you mentioned earlier, the zones and all that. We wanted to make it sort of fairer for everyone. So the draft came in. There might have been some zone rules still at the time. Was any of that still happening parallel to the draft?
I believe so. Yeah, and I think that they kind of phased that out, and that was sort of done in conjunction with switching over the under-19s comp to the sort of the comp that we have now, where it's not aligned with they're not directly aligned to AFL clubs. I think that's sort of how it worked. Because the thing with the zones was that the zones were supposed to rotate every, I can't remember how many, I think it was every 3 years or 5 years or something like that. And basically the clubs that had the great zones, of course, didn't want to cough up the zones once it got it got their time to give it up. And the clubs that had the not so good zones,
the rich clubs wanted to keep the nice zones, and
although look, I would argue, like I could sort of, I've had a few debates with people of my vintage and older about how zones and stuff like that, and whether like that. Look, there were some clubs that I think were probably were disadvantaged by it to a certain extent, but I think a fair bit of it was a club's ability to develop their zone, because this is my thing. For example, like Richmond had Mildura, right? As far as country zones go, Richmond had Mildura. Fitzroy kind of had around like Warrnambool, Colac. We had, of course, the Geelong area. Collingwood had like Essendon had like Western Districts. So it was like that was like right out towards the border. So they had almost like
Danaher boys probably.
Yeah, that was in New South Wales. They got them from south.
That's right.
They were in South Zone.
That's
so
right.
South sort of had up around there. North had sort of Ovens and Murray, so Albury, Wodonga, Rutherglen, around there. Collingwood had like Horsham, Hamilton, sort of in between. St Kilda had Ballarat. Carlton had Bendigo. Hawthorn had the Melbourne side of Gippsland. Footscray had the eastern side of Gippsland. So I would have been in, if I was coming up in league, I would be in Footscray's zone.
You think if we
got
it
sort of work like that, and you look at some of the play, like this is the thing. It's like you look at the quality of some of the players that St Kilda got out of their zone, and they used to complain about this. Like, you got one of the primo zones, right? And Carlton had Bendigo, and Carlton had, I don't know what it was with Carlton's, with a lot of the Bendigo boys. They had a lot of those guys that come down. They'd have a bit of a kick and go, "This isn't for me," and go home.
Yeah.
So, they got a lot of great really great players out of their zone. But funnily enough, that's how they first got their hands on Greg Williams and rejected him because he was a Bendigo boy. So
could have got Selwood if the rules still applied.
Yeah, but then we would have got guys like we would have had guys like Luke Hodge and these types of players.
Jonathan Brown.
But yeah, for me, it was, I think the quality of players that came out of some of these zones were comparable, but I think it was what happened once they got to the club that a lot of these blokes, that had a serious amount of talent, never kicked on. And some guy, and like Essendon got tons of good players out of that zone, despite the fact that almost nobody lived out there. Like they built those great premiership sides of the 80s on that zone. So, but having said that, I do think that like bringing in the draft has been a good thing, and I think a necessary thing if you're going to have a national competition. So that
I was going to say, I think you'd want to, especially if there is, and it's not confirmed, but if there is an intention at some point to have a team in the northern states, say like Northern Territory or something like that, then I'd still, you have the draft, but I think you make some concessions for zonage, just to sort of support the local people, the local talent, sort of in those areas. And I'd be okay with that as a supporter of another club. It's like, okay, look, if they want to recruit some kids from Darwin or Alice or Tiwi Islands or whatever it is, then go for it. If that means that sort of keeps them there and they can build a club identity, and the players can feel like they belong to something, as opposed to moving them to another club where they've got nothing to do on the other side of the country, where they don't know anything about. So look, overall though, I think the equalisation was a good thing, especially, and it was all happening at the same time. As I said, we're moving clubs to other states. We're adding some. We'll get to this in a minute, but we're adding some other teams as well. But it's an absolute national competition, and you got to make things fair for everyone as much as you can. Even though we've probably never got there since we've started trying in the 80s, we never quite got there. We talked earlier about not having much access to football games. But it was the late 80s we started to get some actual games of regular season, actual games shown on normal TV during the regular season. I think they were the Sunday games, maybe. I think that goes to the point around those Queensland teams, or you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe that we started fixturing some games on Sundays, potentially, and that allowed us to start showing some games the very early days. But yeah, it was like you get a package of a quarter or something like that here and a quarter there, and that was your AFL content for the week. Maybe 3 games.
Basically, the way it used to work, and the older whoever's still watching, the older people remember, the VFA was the Sunday league, and there would be one live VFA game on Sunday. That was pretty much late 60s to the early 80s, and then the VFL couldn't play on Sundays. The VFL basically couldn't play on Sundays, and they had to petition the state government, I think, to be allowed to do that. But they basically saw, hey, the VFL have been pretty good for most of the 100 years of its existence after the split, to destroy the VFA and sabotage the VFA as best as they possibly could. Once they saw that, the VFA is getting a bit of a foothold here, we can't have this, they started to take over the Sunday games, and that was part of the attraction of South Melbourne moving to Sydney every second week. You had a live game on Sunday afternoons. The other week they would play a Resi's game at South Melbourne's ground, the Army Reserve Cup or whatever. Whatever it was called, and then and that was pretty much what they did until the Eagles and Bears came in, and then
Eagles and Bears. That's the one I was looking for. Yep, sorry.
Yeah, then the Eagles and Bears came in, so you pretty much had, your 3, 2, sometimes 3 interstate games, up to 3 interstate games that you could be playing, and showing live every weekend. But I mean, look, even then, I remember I think the early Eagles versus Bears games weren't actually televised live in Victoria.
No. Do you remember, and we won't go on this point for too long, but I used to know people that had massive satellite dishes, and they could sort of stream game or show games interstate, but you couldn't show them in Victoria. I think, is that you understand? Yeah. But if you had this massive satellite dish, or if you knew someone that had this and pick up channels from all over the shop, pick up signals that were meant for New South Wales or Queensland or whatever. That'd be fine. And then go to your mate's place. But you could just turn the telly on and watch a game of footy though.
You could do that because they would show games live, some games live, like up here in the valley. They would do it. If you get one of these satellite dishes, you could probably pick up like one of the regional stations that was showing the game live, and the cricket was another one as well.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It wasn't blacked out up here, so because 9, I don't know if they really still do it anymore, but like basically. If you were out here, you could watch the full day of cricket live if you wanted to. So if you had, I didn't know anybody who had them. I knew people who knew people who had them.
I'm like that too.
So you could basically tune into one of the regional stations and get extra live sport that way.
Those were the days. Those were the days. All right, let's whip through real quick. Do you remember the police horses? I do. I remember the police. They used to walk up and down the boundary line and all that. But things got a little bit crazy eventually, and I think people would run on the ground and all that sort of stuff and get trampled on by horses and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, they eventually, in the early 90s, they eventually got replaced with the private security and stricter AFL regulations regarding player safety and all that sort of stuff. So they got phased out sadly around that time. I think you might still see them around Yarra Park every now and then, but I don't even think, I can't remember the last time I saw one, but that was a common thing to see a policeman on a horse at a football game. Very weird. Now I hate it. I hate it with a passion, Horatio, when we play a game at GMHBA and they play the opponent, they play the visiting team's club song. I'm like, fuck this shit. Some clubs used to do it prior to 1990. Some clubs would do the right thing play the opposition song when they ran out before the game started and after the game finished, if the away team had won. But it wasn't until 1990 that the AFL basically took control of that side of the thing and insisted that all clubs had to do that. You got to play the song as you ran out, and if you won the game, you got to listen to the song as well. And in the same year, they started introducing performance enhancing drugs. They started cracking down on it, and they started sending people around to independent testers to go out and take piss samples and all that sort of stuff. It was a big thing, the steroids and all that sort of stuff. People cheating in the Olympics in 1988 and all that type of stuff. And 84, it was all a big thing. It became a massive thing in the game. Extra time in finals in 1991, and then what happened in 94? We had like 2 draws or something like that in 94.
Actually 1991 they brought in the final 6, which was an absolute debacle.
That's right.
That only lasted 3 years. Then we went to the final 8, and the final 8, that was the first year they decided to do extra time.
That's right.
And the first final went to the first final with the rule in place, went to extra time.
It was insane. I remember listening to it on the radio. I'm like, what is going on here? It was very exciting. They killed off under 19s footy. Unfortunately, couldn't keep that going. Unfortunately, that was a bit of a shame. You talked about the final 6 system as well. It was just nuts. It was this weirdest complex mathematical bullshit that everyone was confused. You didn't know who you were playing from one week to the next. Weird. 1993, priority picks came in for clubs that were shit over a period of time. They started giving them an extra pick before the first round even kicked off. I think Carlton might have got a bit of a love out of this one as well. But
that was
it
Brisbane and
Brisbane
Sydney were the team that were mainly the team that they brought it in for, and then I think Fitzroy might have got a little bit of benefit for. Well, they might have used it without, they didn't last much longer after that. But
I might be thinking of Cruiser. Richmond might have finished bottom, but Carlton got a priority pick and used it on Matty Cruiser or something, if I've got that correct.
Yeah, I think it was something like that.
Yeah. Hey, Atush is in the house. Priority picks. I think they're starting to phase them out now. They're still that kind of, the AFL can still use a bit of discretion, but I don't think they really like to do that anymore. We finally got a third umpire in 1994. as I said, we had the one umpire for about 80 years, and then we started going, oh, let's add another one, let's add another one. And I think this year a couple of years ago, we got the fourth umpire, but 1994 we got the third one. We reduced the length of quarters to 20 minutes, but at the same time, we expanded some time on rules as well. So sometimes quarters would go for like 35 minutes in the end, but yeah, it was sort of, it felt like it felt like it was going a little bit longer, even though the quarters went from 25 minutes to about 20 minutes. So probably
it hasn't really changed much, to be honest.
Not really. And if anything, they talk about making them even shorter. I know Paddy Dangerfield's big on that one, isn't he? He just wants to make them a little bit quarter. The first themed round, I don't know if you're one of those people that whinges about themed rounds, but we got our first themed round, and correct me if there's another one that I've missed. 1996, it was centenary round, 100 years of the VFL or the AFL/VFL.
Great night. We played Essendon. We got thumped. Darren Buick had a night out, but they played a Legends game beforehand, and it was just awesome. It was just awesome to see all the guys that were playing. When I first started watching footy, that was just a great night. Despite the fact we got whooped.
Fire up the Google machine and have a look at some of the photos of the Guernseys from that round. It was absolutely terrific. The Geelong one, not so much, but yeah. Anyway, it's fun. It
was similar to the one we used in 2003.
Yeah, that's right. I love the retro round. It's great.
Yeah, all the Guernseys that round were really good.
Same year, we got pay TV for the first time. Channel 7. Do you remember Optus Vision? Does that ring a bell?
I do. I know I had it.
Did you have it? That was the first pay TV. Yep. It was Channel 7 had a monopoly on the AFL before that, and then 7 sub-licensed the package of games to Optus Vision, which is Foxtel's main rival at the time. Now, this is another one that we take. This is where we're getting to the point where these days we take these things for granted. 1997, you could buy a ticket to a game online for the first time. It was like, okay, Ticketek started to pioneer this online ticketing system. No one trusted it. No one used it. But that was the first, what's this internet thing? It's great. The internet's wonderful. And then it's like, hang on, I don't want to give my credit card details to it though. But yes, you could do it. Not many people used it. And eventually got better and better until we got to 2000 when we opened up the Docklands Stadium, or what's it called these days, Marvel Stadium. Essentially, it was basically retraining the AFL public how to go about buying tickets for football, and it became like a totally new way of reserving seats for the footy. The reserves comp died. This breaks my heart. When the reserves comp died in 1999, I loved the reserves, absolutely loved it, but logistically just too difficult and too financially straining, especially as we were still transitioning from a state comp to even that was like 15 years in at that point. It was still early days trying to build a national competition. It was just too expensive at the time. We didn't have the TV rights deals that we have today, and a bunch of other things that just made it really, really hard. 2000, we got the laser barcode readers. Remember the days you'd have to sort of go in and they'd rip your ticket and all that sort of stuff. You get your little
I've still got membership cards. My first couple of membership cards were snip them at the gate.
Exactly. And these days you don't even use the barcode. Don't really use the barcode. You tap on, you tap off with your phone, essentially. So for the most part, I do anyway. So,
but yeah, like the old card clippers.
Exactly. And I'm being told to wrap it up soon, so I'll whip through it real quick. We've got the online broadcast for the first time in 2002. I think that was on the AFL website. I think you could watch old games if you had a certain subscription, that kind of thing. We got the match review panel in 2005, which started applying this weird mathematical points matrix, which I still don't understand today. But that's 21 years old these days. We got the score review system in 2012. Lots of things happened in 2012. We got the score review system, goal line cameras, the arc, all that sort of stuff. We got AFL free agency coming in. We got the official AFL Live app, which talked about stats before. But can you watch footy these days without without having stats. 2014, we got the names on the jumpers. I don't know how you felt about that, but Marcus Bontempelli's name on the back of a jumper would have been a bit weird. But
I actually wish we'd kept the names on the jumpers instead of these bloody extra sponsors.
Yeah, I know.
Like I wasn't big on the names on the jumpers, but seeing as they've just we'll use that space for advertising instead of a player name. Yeah, I wish they'd gone with the name instead.
Yeah, definitely. We scrapped the grand final replay in 2016 after 85 years of no extra time. We've decided to scrap the grand final replay. 2019, then we had the 666. We're getting to 2023 where we added the fourth umpire. And then obviously this year, it's the first year of the wildcard round. So absolutely insane. And we've nearly we're just about to kick over 3 hours. So I rushed through a little bit at the end there because I was getting the wrap up, but that was a lot. 5.5 pages of my notes for your ratio. I appreciate your time.
No, that's all right.
But that was a good trip down history lane, as I say, memory lane.
Well, all I can say after going through all that is, look, I remember, I remember, I'm sort of, I was reasonably well established as a footy fan by the time, sort of South went to Sydney, and then, they went to the national competition and all this kind of stuff. And look, I would say that, and I've always been a fan of interstate footy as well. Like, I was always watched Sandford footy and Waffle footy as a kid. So, and look, I was a big fan of the national comp in the sense that, look, there's a lot of players that are running around today that had it been like it used to be, that we wouldn't have seen them. Like you think about, a lot of the, like when I was a kid, I was a South Fremantle fan. I was a big, if you were a big South Fremantle fan in those, in my younger days, you were a Stephen Michael fan, and he was that close to signing with Geelong, except he came over here and it was pissing down rain the whole time he was here. He's like, what do I want to come over here for? I can have a barbie any time of year home in Perth and stuff, and be at home with my mates and, all this. I don't need to come over to this crap, So this is the thing, is it's like we didn't get to see a bloke of his caliber, play at a VFL level, but in today's footy you would. And then you think of guys in the South Australian League that I watched, as a young bloke, that either didn't come over at all, or came at the end of their career, or for a year, like blokes like Barry Robran, Russell Ebert, Rick Davies, all champion players, but just never had, through life constraints and just not wanting to be with their families and having jobs and all that kind of thing. We get the opportunity there to see the best players, right? So, for that, I'm like, yep, that is a huge improvement. And I think, probably ultimately the best thing that's happened to footy in my time. Unfortunately, there's been a bit of I suppose it's to be expected that there's been a bit of a disconnect between, particularly in this state, I miss the days of being able to, go to a suburban ground because they all had their own distinct flavour, and it was a unique. Each ground had a unique experience, something unique and nuances about them that made going to that ground a particular kind of experience, which you don't get that anymore. And at least, and I've said this particularly to South Australians, because, most of those, I love going over to South Australia. I can't do it like I used to, having kids and stuff like that. But I went to Prospect to watch North Adelaide last time I was over there, and Barry Robin was doing the souvenir stand, stuff like that. You can stand at the can bar and there'll be legendary players standing there on the terraces watching the game. So you can still get a little, the crowds are not as big, but you can still get a little bit of that flavour if you go to over to Adelaide and watch a game. And I think that's why it's great to have gather round. If you're going to do something like gather round, to have it in Adelaide, because it's a great state for footy, and it's a great place to watch footy, and the footy culture in that state is awesome. So yeah, and you just don't. It's just not the same over here anymore. With that sort of stuff, it's all kind of moved on from that, which is a bit sad. And look, that was the one benefit of the end of the Rezzies, when they sort of essentially merged with the VFA/VFL. That 1 year, I went to a VFL game every week that year, sometimes two, on top of going to watch every Geelong game. And it was just awesome going, because I went out to a lot of the old VFA grounds, went out to a lot of the old VFL grounds. We played, I think at, we played at Coburg that year. We played at Preston that year. We played at Moorabbin, all of these grounds. And we got to, and it was that really pretty much the only year it was like that. And I got to go around and sort of do a few things that I didn't get to do as a little kid, and just get that last little taste of it before it was all gone. And the highlight of that year, I went to the VFL Grand Final, and that was the last game that was ever played at Waverley. And I went to a lot of games at Waverley, and me and my mate pretty much walked around the ground at the end of the game, just did a slow lap for about an hour, like a really slow lap, just talking about all the games we've been to there and all the stupid stuff we did on the, this happened here, and we were sitting up there and just reminiscing for a good hour, about all the great times we'd had there and stuff like that. So, I think, so, that was a really good year. Probably might be close to my favourite year of footy in terms of just the experience, because, after that it wasn't the same anymore. But to wrap it up from my end, I will say this: the AFL have, every year there's rule changes, and then those rule changes don't work, and they've got to change more rules and all of that kind of thing. The thing that shits me the most is that the one rule they needed to change, they didn't change. And that was the interchange rule. When Mick Moldhouse, when all this GPS stuff, these GPS readings and stuff like that came in, and they worked out, hey, if we play Dane Swan in 5-minute bursts, he's twice as good a footballer as if we just leave him out there running around all day. So it was like 5 minutes on, 5 minutes off, however they worked it out. And he was just coming on and off the ground all day. And then it was like, hey, we can do this with everybody. So the next thing you know, like in 2008, Matthew Scarlett was off the ground for like 2 minutes of the whole season, right? Whereas over at Collingwood, they were rotating 50, 60, 70 players on and off the bench all day. Now, I'm telling you, the AFL at that point needed to say, no, this is not what the interchange are for. This is not ice hockey. We're not having shifts here. This is how it's going to be. And they didn't do it. And what my problem is, and this is the thing that I miss most about the game, I can sort of reminisce about the old suburban grounds and, watching, games where there was like 5 goals kicked all day because the ground was under 6 inches of mud, and, players were so it was so muddy you couldn't tell one team from the other and all that kind of stuff. That's all great. I'm glad I got to experience it. But, with the game being as high stakes as it is these days, that's you probably can't really have that at the top level of your sport. But what I miss is positional play. This is the thing I keep saying. I want a full forward. I want a full back. And it doesn't make any sense to me, right? Like, and I say this, it's like, look, could a guy like Tony Lockett play in today's footy? And I'm like, look, if you've got a bloke who, if you kick it to in 20 times, you get 50 inside, you kick it in your forward line 50 times, right? So you're 50 inside 50s, and you kick it to in 25 times. He's going to mark it 12 times. And if he marks it 12 times, he's going to kick 7 or 8 goals every time you do that. If you had a bloke at your side that you like, if we get him enough of the ball, he's going to kick 7 or 8 goals every single week. Why wouldn't you kick it to him? Why would you want to say, no, we don't want to give him the ball. We want to give it to these other blokes. We want to share it around. It's like, no, get to the bloke who can take a mark and go back and convert it. Doesn't make any sense to me.
Not everyone can do it. On that note, I better wrap the show up, mate. I've got to get to bed, and I'm making a bit too much racket now that people are trying to sleep. So, thank you very much for coming on, and anyone in the chat and anyone watching. I really, really appreciate it. It's been fun. And Paul will be back next Thursday, and I think it will just be the Paul only show next Thursday. I don't think you'll have a guest on, but no, I appreciate you giving up some of your time tonight, mate. It's been good fun.
Oh, and I will just say, you did forget the most important rule change of the whole thing in 1982 when they stopped you bringing your own cans to the footy.
I forgot about that one. All right, mate. Good night, everyone. Take care. See you on the next one.
Bye.
Cheers.